it's always good to know that each one of us are healthy and are that we're here and that we can uh, at least see one another, whether it's virtually or not. Those of you who have not spoken to for the past couple of weeks, um, thank you for being here. Uh, and I think we're blessed not to be healthy and to be here. My report is gonna be Catherine. You there? Okay, good. I see you. It's gonna be split in a report from Catherine and myself. Mine is basically on some of the things that we've done in the past couple of weeks. Uh, we've partnered with Northern Manhattan Coalition for the Immigrants uh, uh, to participate in providing them 125 hot meals every Tuesdays or every Tuesday for a specific section of our community who's always been on the off the grind or off the grid is the undocumented families in partnership with a local restaurant which I will not promote, but they have been extremely grateful in providing these meals for 125 undocumented families each and every Tuesday. Also, 809 Restaurant is providing the local precincts and the emergency rooms of two hospitals, which I also will not name, hot meals daily, on average between 20 to 30, on average, hot meals. Uh, and I would like to publicly say thank you to uh, those local restaurants who asked me not to name, who are also participants of these programs or contributions to our community who's in a lot of need. Uh, in besides that, we have been in the process of continuing to phase in or phase out um, our virtual operation. Um, we've also determined that a lot of some of our elder board members are in the need of having the proper equipment um, to participate in these meetings. Uh, some have kind of like old, cell phones, and they're really not in, at par with what the technology nowadays requires them to have. So we're gonna move forward, and that's going to be part of Catherine's report, as to make sure that we, as a board, can uh, help them with the actual technology needs that they have. In addition to that, we've identified some community organizations who don't have the means, the funds, or the technological savvy uh, to have a Zoom meeting just like the way that we have. So we're gonna partner with them, train them, and allow them to use our Zoom account. Again, always with our supervision and technological savvy, so that we can help them transition into a virtual world that they haven't necessarily been trained to or don't have the means to. And that's what we've kind of been doing for the past couple of weeks, is to transition over our operation into a 100% virtual, and also reaching out and becoming more of just a resolution or a paper pushing organization. We are a living organization, and a living organization should serve those needs to a community that is not also in the need of just food, but also needs to become part of this new day, this new world, this new virtual world. And I think that we've been transitioning to that. Catherine, for the last couple of minutes, if you want to take over my part of the presentation.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Catherine. I'm the first vice chair for Manhattan CB12. I see there's some new board members that have joined us, so welcome. So as Eliezer said, I've been working with Ebenezer and the team on what are, this transition to remote work in terms of what are the needs that they have, where are there some gaps. As a lot of y'all know, for example, our phone system wasn't necessarily portable, and so they worked really diligently on that in, I would say, early to mid-April. Um, and so I think as during the Ebenezer's report and during the treasurer report, I can kind of dive into some additional suggestions. But since Elisa asked for a teaser, it is. So outside of purchasing laptops for them to actually use for work purposes, where they have access to the office server, part of the conversation is also around accessibility, and that not all board members have laptops or tablets to tune into Zoom. And so part of our proposal is to be able to purchase equipment that we can loan to board members so they can access meetings and run meetings from their homes, since virtual meetings will be here for a while. So that's pretty much it, I think, on my end, unless there's something you wanted me to dive into now, Eddie.
Thank you, Catherine, for all the hard work and all the time that I know you put in taking time off from your job, which is extremely demanding. I like to, and I'm sorry that I kind of like didn't really do it in a proper way. I like to thank and welcome two of our newest appointed board members, Angel Vasquez, whom I know personal. Thank you, Angel. And I see Richie S. Christina should be her name. And I also see a new face, Mariella Graham. Hi, Mariella. Very nice seeing you. And welcome. I like to, you guys are going to have a shout out token today. Don't think you're going to be there all quiet all night. So just be prepared. Angel, I can't see you, so please show your face. So everybody like to know who you are and what you look like, if you can, of course.
Well, give me just 1 second. I will.
No problem. Okay. And Ebenezer, your report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Always a pleasure to be here as your district manager. My report this month going to be very short and sweet, but very rich. I am pleased to inform you that in the month of May, every committee of Community Board 12 had a virtual meeting. We work very hard. It's required that I have to meet the aging committee chair at the board office and make sure that we can have her meeting at the board office and provided with a laptop, et cetera, everything went well. So I'm pleased to inform that every community committee, Community Board 12, had a virtual meeting in the month of May. Our virtual operation went well this month. The staff more knowledgeable, more savvy, with more experience in the handle of the tools that we have, Zoom and WebEx. I participate in several training with WebEx, and I want to let everybody know that the nights that we have two meetings at the same time, we're going to be using the two platforms. We're going to be using Zoom and we're going to be using WebEx at the same time, because it's no way that we can have the two meetings on Zoom. And one of the meeting going to be broadcast in YouTube, and the other meeting going to be broadcast in Facebook. That happened this month on Wednesday, the 6th, when we had land use and public safety, and also happened on Thursday, the 7th, when we had the Health and Environment Committee and the Housing and Human Services Committee. Today we are having our executive committee. This week on Thursday, we're going to have the district service cabinet meeting, and on the 26th, the day after Memorial Day, we're going to have the general meeting via Zoom as well. Together with Catherine, together with Jonathan, Joe Coluccio, and Eliazar Bueno, I have been working also in the technology that we're going to be using in the future month. We don't know when we're going to be back. The office, as you know, is ready to transmit from the studio that we have in the main room. Everything is set for us to do meetings via YouTube and Zoom from the office, but we don't know when we're going to go back. So we have been working in acquiring more laptops or tablets, so the staff have better computers. Right now, the staff, we're working with computers that we already had there. It's working more or less, but we need to have computers that really work good and be prepared to do this live streaming without any problem. You see that sometimes you don't see the staff because the computer they're using, doesn't have a camera. So we working on getting the best deal we can with the recommendation from Do It, and also working with the budget, how we're going to be acquiring the equipment that we need for the next phase, because we don't know we're going to be back. The community residents, they have been calling the office for several issues, noise complaints. They have been calling the office also for landlord and tenants issues. And we have been answering those phone calls. As I mentioned last month, all the phone calls from the telephone, from the office telephone, is forwarded to our cell phones, and we are answering. It's not that many phone calls, but we get it, some phone calls with several issues. And we also have been working very close with the city agencies, especially the mayor's office. They reach to me very often, asking for the contact information for local leaders or local community-based organizations. And I have been in communication with the mayor's office as well. This is the end of my report, but Mr. Chairman, at this point, I would like to remind you a request that I had for the year or so, is the reviewing of a merit raise for the district manager. As you know, we have been working with this since Shah Ali was the chair of the board, and this item was pending in November and December last year, and because some issues, it was referred for the following month. Now, we had the situation with COVID-19, and we had to be working from home. It has been postponed as well. As you know, next month, June, is the last meeting that we're going to have in this fiscal year. And I will very respectfully request that you and the executive committee review my request. Thank you very much. And this is the end of my report.
And Ebenezer, I'm sorry to call you to bring you back into start of your report. Would you mind please explaining, or not explaining, but giving us an update on the resolution that was passed back in a couple of months ago for the inclusion resolution, as to where it is and what has been done, so that we can put that out to rest. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. The resolution of inclusion was passed in February, and we started reviewing, and the office prepared that resolution back then, and we sent it for the final reviews. However, because we have the situation with the pandemic and working remotely, the review was not complete. Last week, with your leadership and the leadership of Liz Reader, this item was rescinded for review. It was reviewed by the end of last week, and I prepared it at the end of last week. You had the final review and the final signature this morning. And this morning, I sent that resolution to the Manhattan Borough President and the elected officials that need to be pertinent. So thank you very much. Sorry for the delay, but working too many things at once. We don't want, it fell on the crack a little bit because of the situation we had. However, we'll resume, and we don't want to do a sloppy job. We did the right thing to do and review it, and went out correctly.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you guys for all the hard work. Gerard, you're next up on the Treasurer's report.
Great. Good evening.
Appreciate that.
Ebenezer was kind enough to email me Saturday updated template for the Treasurer's report, which for May. A week is definitely preferred. It just gives more time on that. But the May report, just for everybody's understanding, includes actuals, or should include actuals from July through April, and should include forecast numbers from May through June. With that said, high level, I did get that out to the executive committee members, a revised and corrected PDF. And on a high level, under unrestricted funding source, we have about $30,134 that could be available for retasking. In the unrestricted alternate other personal service, 20,219. I'm going straight off that spreadsheet that was sent out this morning. That totals about $50,354 that's estimated that could be retasked for other things like the computers and technologies you're all speaking about this evening. So at a high level, that's the report. 50,354 appears, plus or minus, available at this time. Specific account questions, I'm going to let Ebenezer step in at a high level I could speak to.
Could I,
Sorry, Liz.
Yeah, we're gonna go with
Just to
Liz.
keep mind of stacks.
Would you please?
Aisha, Sally, and then Liz, and then myself.
You say Aisha, and then Sally, and then,
Liz, and then me.
okay, good.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. So I wanted to chime in on the status of what's happening with Facebook and YouTube. Concern that I have is that a brand new Facebook was created, which last I checked has 70 people on it. After much work has gone into building the original Facebook that has thousands of people on it, all who are people from our community that have tuned in, that both OC and I worked on over time. And for whatever reason, the decision was made to revamp that and start a new one. The reasoning behind that is peculiar to me, but seemingly it is because no one wanted to talk to me about it because I'm the administrator of that Facebook page. It seems like it's just counterproductive to our work to like right now if we're talking to 70 people while we could be talking to 3,000 people if only someone would say the word. But I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This is a continuance of what has continued to happen where I am concerned on this board based off of things that were improper in the first place, which are tied into the inclusion resolution that has been delayed. And I would like for that to be addressed at some point. And I would like for this board or members specifically of this board to stop attempting to marginalize and silence me and to stop ignoring the injustice that has taken place with various things, various items and various work that I put a lot of work into, and not just myself, but which the Housing and Human Services Committee put in. There's resolutions, the immigrant resolution that was passed near unanimously. I think one person voted against it. Has never, it's almost a year now, and it has never seen the light of day.
Okay. Thank you for your
Thank you, but I honestly would like to know status on those things.
Okay.
I would like for it not to just go by the wayside like everything else.
Okay, no problem. Thank you so much. The next person, Catherine.
Could you answer the question as to why there was a new Facebook page created, for example?
The January or February, Aisha was asked to connect with Jonathan from ETA so that they can join in forces and take on the IT task force so that they could merge both accounts. And it's Jonathan, to this day, has not heard from Aisha.
That is an absolute lie. That is an absolute lie. I can show you the chat.
So let me answer the question. Curtis. So what I try to do from the beginning is to merge those accounts with social media.
That's
social
a lie.
Media.
You're not going to.
Yo, like honestly, man, I don't.
Let me answer.
People actually have things to do.
Curtis, does that answer your question? I'm not gonna allow.
No, a lie does not answer the question. That's a lie, and I stand by that.
All right, okay, no problem. So as I was answering the question to you, Curtis, you understand what I'm trying to tell you? I was trying to merge. Jonathan is there, he's present.
No efforts were done to merge the Facebook.
Jonathan, if you will, if I'm not gonna continue to get the meeting.
You can continue to silence me, but the truth is the truth.
Okay, all right, so that's the truth. That's your truth.
Aisha and rest of the guys. Let me explain you technically what is the reason why we are using the current Facebook page. The reason why we are using this specific Facebook page is because this one is under Ebenezer profile. We are not going to use as per decision made by.
For 3 years, I
Oh my God,
requested
this is
that the
not-
office take.
No, we're not gonna
The
allow
page
that.
you have,
It's
the
not
page
gonna
you
happen.
have- The page you have is under your personal.
Keep muting me. I'm gonna go on Facebook and blast exactly what the dynamics are that goes on within this
problem.
board.
Okay.
You cannot silence
Alright.
me.
Yo,
Okay.
this is,
I don't
come
know
on,
who's
bro.
doing
Like people got work, man. Long days to hear this.
Can I make a suggest? Can I make a
It's about
suggestion?
process, Domingo.
Yeah.
It's
Come
about
on,
process.
man.
You know what?
This is the executive committee meeting. Come on.
This is the executive committee.
Can I make a suggestion?
So Curtis,
Yes.
yeah, please make your suggestion.
Jonathan, perhaps you can change the admin role from the old Facebook page to Ebenezer's page without having to delete the old page or not use the old.
I have
Did
suggested
you
that for
at
3
least
years.
did you at least hear what she had to say? I mean, what Jonathan's explanation to your question is, because I really have to move on. We're not gonna allow this. We're not going back to the old
It's
days.
actually not the appropriate.
So can you please answer the question?
Yeah. Well,
Go ahead.
what I was saying is that the current page is tied to Ebenezer web page, which is the CV12. Actually, is on the head of the office, right? And that's why the Facebook page should be tied to his profile. The other page that Aisha has is under his personal,
Which could have been
profile.
done with the
And
old
what we can
Facebook
do,
page.
Aisha, with the current page you have, that I don't know this page because I never saw it, right? What we can do with this page that you actually have is we can merge, we can invite
Exactly.
all those users, we can invite them from the current page, and invite them to join the page that we are using from the Ebenezer's profile. That's the best approach that I can.
I have a trail
Curtis,
of emails
Curtis,
which actually
Curtis.
Ebenezer is on.
Yeah.
And had
Curtis, are
any
you
of that been entertained, we
satisfied
wouldn't be
with the
here at this
answer
junction,
that
but I'm not going to
Jonathan
continue
just
to be
gave you?
silent in this
I'm
board.
satisfied. I'll email Jonathan.
Thank you.
I'll email
All right.
Jonathan directly.
No problem. So does anyone else? Who's the next person, Catherine, on the line?
It's Sally.
Sally.
Eli, I had a
Sally?
question. Is
Oh,
the
no,
treasurer's,
no, no.
I'm confused. Is it done?
I was hoping that
the
the
treasurer's
questions.
report.
I was hoping that the
questions?
questions were related to your presentation and
My
not
question relates to the treasurer's report.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Sally, you're next.
Yes. First, request that the financials be sent to the complete board, not just the executive committee. I requested it last week and I'm still waiting. Also, I wanted to know specifically what the balance is in the community board enhancement initiative. And if we're making expenditures out of those funds, a reminder to the board that any purchase over $10,000 needs to be approved by the full board.
Okay,
So will the financials be sent out to the complete board?
I can't barely hear you.
Will the financials be sent out to the complete board?
Of
And
course, yes, they have to be.
also, well, they haven't been. What is the balance in the community board enhancement initiative?
Ebenezer, can you please answer that question?
Yes, the balance that we have with the initiative that have been given to us is $32,000.
Okay, everyone understands that if that money is not spent in the next 30 days, it disappears. So we need to solicit ideas on how the money is to be spent.
Yes, Catherine, would you talk to Sally offline so that we can move the agenda along, and then by the time that we get back to the general meeting, she'll have a better and a bigger picture of what the status of where we are and what we're spending the next round of money.
Yeah, well, actually, when I raised my hand, I just wanted to kind of run through that and then
Okay, please.
propose a way for folks to solicit ideas in time for general meeting.
Mhm.
But I'll let Liz jump in since she's actually next.
Okay.
Thank you very much. So my question relates to the budget and the PS line. We have a fair amount of money left over in the personnel services line. And I'm just wondering, is it at all possible for us to hire I don't know, local people, youth, somebody to be a small little army of flyer posters to go through the community, to post flyers of our meetings, our Zoom meetings, whatever are the other communication directives that we would like to get out to the community that clearly Ebenezer and Chanel and Paola do not have the time to do. We have the money. We could be paying somebody, I don't know, 15 bucks an hour, a couple hours a week to go be flyering up parks and intersections and whatnot.
Definitely. And Catherine, that's probably leads up to Catherine's question and sort of like report on those kind of expenses as you just referred to.
I do have one other, just as an aside to the conversation that we had had earlier, just a moment ago, without re-adjudicating the whole thing. And to be honest, I don't understand one Facebook page from another, but I do think that, you know, as a pretty heavy Facebook user and as somebody who likes to see our messages getting out to as many people as possible, whatever else may be true, clearly we do a better job of communicating with the community if the active Facebook page that we're using is the one that has hundreds or thousands of people who like it or follow it or whatever, than the one that's got, you know, 12 people or 70 people. So, you know, we have enough difficulty already with making sure that people know who we are and what we do. So whatever we can do to capitalize on the active social media venues that we have that already have a lot of followers, I think that whoever is responsible for that should be working together to make sure that that's what we're using. I don't think Jonathan and Aisha need to adjudicate that now, but for sure y'all should be having a conversation later tonight or tomorrow on how best to do the most that we can with what we've already built rather than reinventing the wheel.
Yeah, and to that point, I don't know if Jonathan want to answer to that.
Yes.
It was never the intention to reinvent the wheel, but there has been on Jonathan's side attempts to work around both issues with the two Facebook pages. I can and Ebenezer are witnesses to that. So the fact of, you know, the whole not allowing people to be part of it, that's something that I think does not correspond and is far away from the truth as to what Jonathan's or my intentions or Ebenezer's intentions were when those were created. So as you said, thank you for bringing that up. This is an opportunity to better the process rather than, you know, continue with something that is really unnecessary. Moving along, unless Jonathan, is there another question, Catherine? Is that you next?
Well, you wanted to let Jonathan
answer it, or you're gonna go because I really like to get to the agenda and not spend that much time on something that can easily be resolved.
Well, okay, so and considering that we're on the treasurer's report, I'll do that. So I'm just gonna kind of recap some of the ideas that have been shared in the past and make space, I think perhaps the best way, and you can let me know if this is inappropriate, but folks maybe can email those suggestions to, you know, Ebenezer, Gerard, Eliezer, and myself around the budgeting. So back in, March, I was prepping the proposal from the board office side in terms of needed expenses and contracts that had to be made. And then of course, Corona came. So that went to the back burner, and actually some of them are really kind of urgent. So again, like I shared on the office equipment side, we are looking to make those purchases. And again, really like loaners, since, for example, some committees haven't been able to meet in the last month or so. On the professional services line, which is essentially, you know, vendors or consultants, we're looking at a number of areas, including what Liz's suggestion is, which is essentially stipending young people. We do have to keep in mind we only have 1 month. So it's something to really kind of think about, move forward on quickly. maintenance again. So our offices do not have a contract for maintenance or janitorial services. It's been like a per diem volunteer and managed by the office staff. Obviously, now in terms of Corona, it's even more urgent. So our space is super dusty. So the idea is to at least clean it twice while it's closed. And then for fiscal year 21, make sure that we're allocating sufficient funds so that we're keeping, really clean, OSHA in line, office spaces and meetings rooms. The other thing was around, we all know there's that kind of like massive closet space, which is where there's tons of records and cabinets. And those are actually files that don't have to be on site. Some of them are very, very old resolutions from like the 90s and the 80s. I don't know if Ebenezer might know like what's the oldest document we have in there. The idea is really to to scan and shred what we don't need to kind of keep physical copies of. Of course, there are certain documents you have to keep physical, and I'm sure as of certain years, but for the years that we can scan and shred, we'll do that, and we can create additional space to store a lot of like the cleaning products, a lot of the chairs, and of course, a lot of the new board equipment that we're purchasing so that it's tucked away and safe. So I'm just trying to go real quick. And then in terms of the visibility is one of the areas, and in terms of finding consultants, which would potentially be a fiscal year 21, but getting a consultant around what the resolution said that we would do, which is have an annual implicit bias training. A lot of us at the board felt like it could go beyond that, and so I think as the bylaws and ethics and code of conduct or whatever we're renaming the task force meets, additional areas will come up, right? Not just implicit bias, perhaps around communication and conflict resolution and mediation and just other core things that the board has asked for in the past. And so for the maintenance and for most of the services, I do have 3 bids. Keep in mind that all of these expenses are actually lower than $5,000, so we wouldn't have to necessarily bring it to the full board vote. But I did want to share them here just so y'all know what's kind of moving. Part of it, as Liz mentioned, was really around like the flyering. So printing massive amounts of flyers, which we tend to do in the office. For this purpose, we would definitely partner with local print shops to do. And then there's all, in the past, I remember under Shaw's tenure, we had like the hats, we had t-shirts, I think, or the polos or something like that. And so there's an opportunity now in thinking about my own idea is around printing tote bags to be able to partner up with local pantries and distribute to community members along with the flyers of our meetings and our work to just raise general visibility and awareness of the board. So those are some, again, I think, again, this is the exec meeting. We have a lot on our agenda tonight, but really please feedback and talk to other members who aren't present, who do have some really strong ideas and suggestions on what we can do. We have a good amount of money to spend, and we should keep in mind that next fiscal year, we have no idea what that's going to look like. There's definitely going to be cuts coming down. And so thinking about, every penny we spend from in the next month as an investment. So.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. Is this Curtis related to the report?
Yeah, it's related to the report. I just want to respond to Catherine.
Appreciate that.
I'm unmuted, yes. I think all that sounds great. I think those are great ideas. My only hesitation is spending any money on swag. I think it looks great, but there are so many people suffering in the community right now who may be in need of masks and gloves and other utensils throughout the summer. I would be in opposition to purchasing anything that says community board. I think it's a waste of money.
Yeah, I can answer that quickly. We actually, we checked with MVP's office, and we're not able, for me, it's like food insecurity is the biggest thing. How could we partner with supermarkets and things like that? And we're actually not allowed to spend on those. So if you have, definitely just shoot me an email and we can think about it more creatively. But in terms of being able to spend like on food or PPE for the community, our understanding is that it's not allowable.
Okay,
And
thank you.
our ability to help our own board members who have the need is not a waste of time in my mind. I think that we have to make sure that our elders who don't have the equipment to be able to join the meetings, that's
Yeah.
not a waste of time. That's also
No,
a
I
need.
didn't mean that. I
It may
just-
not be, I'm just saying, I get you. I got you. I
I'm
think
saying
we all,
t-shirts. I'm saying
yeah,
t-shirts.
yeah.
I say it's
Yeah,
not,
yeah.
I need
Yeah, yeah.
t-shirts is what I mean.
Got you. Most of the
sorry.
time we're on the same page most of the time. So I got you. Just add into your comment.
Sorry, if
Thank
I
you.
can add, Elisa, that I didn't mention that's really important. Another community board, and this is actually possible to do, did sponsor free yoga and dance classes for the community to happen virtually. So they partnered, for example, with Sweetwater Yoga in the Bronx. So if folks have ideas like that, if whether it's story time or workout classes or something like that, that's virtual, and local folks that we would want to have as consultants to offer that for the community, then that's something that is possible.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Can I just throw something
Liz?
in on that?
No, yeah, I just wanna, if you can, once you finish your question, can you like move on to your report? I like to kind of like move the agenda along.
So in terms of what Catherine just mentioned, there are a number of programs that have happened in the community that have offered those kinds of free classes, and they've all lost their funding. So Bread and Yoga was doing yoga and a couple of other different programs in Fort Tryon Park. And if we can fund some kind of virtual conversion of that would be great. Inwood Artworks was funding a free summer film series in the park. I mean, I can't imagine that's going to be happening anytime soon, but they've done a really good job of moving on to some virtual platforms. Nancy Bruning used to do exercise classes in the park. She's the author of 100 Things to Do on a Park Bench. Get your minds out of the gutter. It's a really good exercise thing. So there are a bunch of people who have been doing that kind of programming that was subsidized through other organizations. And if we have the ability to give modest stipends for that kind of programming, to bring it online to the community, to enhance other kinds of virtual programming, I'm happy to provide you a list of some of the folks who've been doing that. In terms of my report and OC, I'm going to remember to give the secretary's report.
Thank
not
you.
the
Domingo
committee
has his hand up.
report.
I'm sorry, Liz.
Okay.
Before you jump in. Yeah.
So I think one thing that's extremely important to know, like, yeah, Curtis, even though it seems like swag is something that's not necessarily needed at the moment, something as simple as a tote is something that's reusable. And for individuals that are constantly going to pantries and getting these little plastic, these little flimsy plastic bags, I think that it's not just something that is not necessary, and something that if I were you, I would consider as a way of combating all these plastic bags that technically weren't supposed to be used but are being given. Food pantries are using it like there wasn't a law passed around that. So that's just something to think about. But I do think, Kathy, to your point, the tote bags would be extremely important. As somebody who's seen and is constantly, we're delivering food to individuals, being able to have something that's reusable is extremely important.
Thank you, Domingos. Is there anyone else that can go back to our report? Or Liz, can you then move forward with the report? Thank you.
And to my prior comment, word up, of course. So in terms of the secretary's report, it's pretty brief. I have to say, I like in-person meetings, but one of the things, Zoom is a pretty decent substitute. And one of the things that's been amazing about Zoom is it's really increased our attendance, because for people who have certain challenges in attending, being able to do so virtually has really increased people's ability to show up for meetings. So that's been really good. I just got some information from the office over the weekend and today on attendance at the May meetings. So I am going to roll all of that into my spreadsheet and provide a report to the chair. For the most part, so I don't have a specific report on any members who have problem attendance. pretty much all of the people who had attendance issues that we've discussed in the past, and I will not name them since we're not in executive session, all of them have either not reapplied or were not reappointed. There's one member who whose appointment was not yet up, so we may need to deal with that in the future. And then if you can just, and by you I mean Eleazar, if you can send me just the most up-to-date listing of committee assignments so that I'm sure that I have all of that correct. And then as soon as we get it, if we can get an updated membership directory with all of our new board members, welcome to all of our new board members. And if you can just let me know, Eleazar, when you'll be doing the assignment of the new board members to committees. I assume that won't happen until like over the summer, and then in the fall, we'll have the new listing. And with that, that concludes the secretary's report. Oh, wait, Christina Ritchie, she's a new member?
She's a new member?
Okay, yes,
she is.
Okay, I'm gonna promote her to panelist since that's what we've been doing with all the board members. Okie dokie, thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Liz. Thank you very, very, very much for all your sound and wise advice, and mostly everything that we do. We all appreciate your expertise and wisdom. At least a personal way of saying thank you. We'd like to review on our next time in the agenda our July and August meeting calendars. Yes.
Before we move on.
What was that?
Before we move on to the next topic, as far as appointment assignments to committee, I had issues with one board members who was not aware that he was part of licensing, that being Jay Mazer.
No, he was, yeah, he will. I can't, can you hear me? Hello?
Now, yes, now
Can
I
you hear
can
me?
hear you.
Okay,
Now
good.
we can.
Somebody had probably muted me. I spoke to him, and it's not that he was not aware. It's something that we can talk offline. But he was aware. He was just a little hesitant about coming in. But I did speak to Jay, and I'm meeting him tomorrow morning.
Thank you.
Okay. So July calendar, unless anyone has any other issues that they want to talk about before we move on.
You mean June and July?
No, June was set. We did that last meeting. Actually, no. Wait a minute.
There is no August calendar.
Yeah, I'm sorry. June and July. My bad. Thank you, Wayne, for the correction. Appreciate that. June 2020. You guys, I'm sure you have a copy. Is there any changes that you'd like to propose on our virtual meetings?
I have a question. So I personally, being that it feels like everything feels a little bit more settled now, I'll be reconvening our monthly meetings now that there seems to be more guidelines and actually like a better understanding of how to conduct these virtual meetings. Now, my question is, do we just go back to our regular schedule, which is, for instance, for us would be, our meeting would be June 2nd, or do we get to choose?
I think since it's virtual, I think that some committees have already made that.
Okay.
To change it. So I think, that shouldn't be a problem. And we have more than one account, so it's not going to conflict. Okay. With the
I'll just
virtual.
The June 2nd. Thank you.
All right, good enough. Anyone else?
This isn't for June, this is for July. Are we doing them together or individually?
Individually, so we can move on.
In that case, I'll silence myself till we get to July.
So then we're gonna move along to July, unless anyone has anything that they wanna make any changes on. Nope. Silence is good. So July.
So for July, I know that we're not obligated to meet during the summer, so this would be not a mandatory meeting, but there are so many things going on with parks usage, with parks regulations, with, whatever, that I feel it's appropriate to have. This was raised at our May meeting. I want to survey my committee and find out what's a good date for people. But I think that I would like to have at least one meeting over the summer, possibly two, possibly to make things easy on the second Tuesday, as we usually do, just so that people know that there's a place where they can engage around parks usage issues. I mean, I don't think I need permission, but that's just sort of a heads up. And I will work with the staff to advise as to when the date is and how to set up that Zoom.
Okay. Anyone else like to make any changes? Wayne?
Well, no change. Question, we typically have a committee of the whole meeting in July. I don't see it on the calendar.
That's something that we wanted to talk about today, as to what could be a potential date that we all can feel comfortable with, either on the first, second, or third week. I'd like to get some suggestions as to which days, which week can best work for all of you guys.
Eli, if I could just make one quick comment about the, when meetings are. The bylaws say that if a meeting isn't on its regular date, then people are excused. Now, it may be that nothing is on its regular date at that point. So, but it does make it easier, I think, for people to know that even if it's on Zoom, their, traffic meeting will be on the first Monday of the month. So I don't think, unless there's some reason for it, we should try to keep to a schedule. I think that makes it better for people. I think at this point in time in particular, we want to give people some structure. Thank you.
Right. The reason why I wanted to keep it open is this is not, the regular times. This is extremely unique times. I don't know if there's any people who will be going on vacation early. They're going on vacation at all. Are we going to have enough quorum?
Well, that's why I made my point about structure. I think some people find that very comforting. So just keep that in mind if you don't mind.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Ozzy and then Kathy.
Eli, if it's possible, I think it will be best to keep the committee of the whole at the same day. What would be the executive committee meeting or a general meeting? So it's like in sequence.
I like that suggestion.
I also want to ask if Eli or any of our veterans here can just explain. I know what the committee of the whole is, but for a lot of us, just kind of considering that we're newer, what type of business gets discussed at the committee of the whole? Is it your standard executive meeting or anything else?
Since I'm the oldest one here, basically the community board is not required to meet during the summer. But as Liz pointed out, and most of you are aware, especially right now, all sorts of things are going on. So it sometimes serves as a purpose to have a community board meeting where everybody gets together. You can't call it a community board general meeting because we don't have meetings in the summer. So this thing is called the committee of the whole. It's actually in Robert's rules. And we meet as a big committee. We can actually pass resolutions. They have to be affirmed in September at the next general meeting. But again, if there's something that this community board needs to say in July, that we really need to say in July, this gives us an opportunity to get together and put our thoughts together. And, so the only other thought I have is that, we might need one, we might need two, but probably to have one, that's a very good, because, and again, we got to look at the big picture. We want to create community insofar as we can. And so so these meetings will give people an opportunity to see one another, to vent. So I think at the very least, we should have one. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to agree that we're going to use the general meeting as the date for the community for the whole. Okay? That will be on the 21st of July. So Ebenezer, if you can please write that down.
Okay, I am gonna update our July calendar to show that we're gonna have the Parks Committee on the second Tuesday of July and also the Committee of the Whole on the fourth Tuesday of the month in July.
Might not be able to do the second Tuesday of July. I just realized that's the husband's birthday. That will most likely bum him out a great deal. Let me get back to you on the date.
Okay. So you keep that open until.
Trying
Liz
to
can
not get
secure the
divorced
second.
here.
All right. I thought you were already there looking at your background, but I guess not.
No,
So
I have a rotating gallery of pictures taken in our parks.
next thing I'll see Yankee Stadium. Watch.
Me?
So
Stadium? Absolutely not.
so next one on our agenda, since we've moved past along both calendars for June and July's, is the new board member orientation. I have the honor to have spoken to one of the people who has such great knowledge that can lead that effort, Mr. Wayne Benjamin, from whom I'm waiting a date so that we can a date in June, Mr. Benjamin, that we can secure that date from you, from your busy schedule, to have that member training. I'm sure that they'll be delighted to come and participate in your training, which I think will be a life changer for them. And I'm coming too.
Yeah, well, I think you're hyping it a bit too much.
Oh.
Yes, I mean, Eleazar did ask me to participate in that, and I'm happy together a team of folks to do this. And whether it's in June or whether we take the opportunity perhaps to do member orientation was a
I think we lost his internet connection.
We can't hear you.
We'll have you back.
Talking to us from a waffle.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So basically what I said in the past, the new member orientation was a standalone meeting. Had its own agenda, had presentations, and for the new members to, gather with existing members and to speak. In recent years, the new member orientation has been a kind of, took away from, the new member orientation a lot of the time and focus. So I think what we want to do is go back to having the new member orientation to be a standalone, to make sure all of the committees are present, the committee chairs are present, to let folks know what those committees do, because being assigned to a committee and not having a good sense of what it has been looking at, what it is working on, is not to the advantage of new members, but also the ability to network informally and speak to folks. I mean, to me, when I was a new member, that was something that's important. And I don't think we've had that as part of the new member orientation in recent years. So, working with Eleazar, we're going to reach out to a few folks to see who is willing to join this team. But I also think we need to think about whether we want to do it in June, which will still have a full schedule of committee meetings, albeit virtual, or whether we want to take advantage of the fact that we're not as busy and do something in, July. And just to go back to the question of the committee of the whole, yes, in many instances, the committee of the whole functions as, an equivalent of an executive committee meeting or a general meeting. But there have been instances where, it was dedicated to a special presentation or a special purpose. And I'm not saying that the new member orientation should be the agenda item for the committee of the whole, because as Jim Berlin rightfully said, there are often things that pop up in the summer that the board has to opine on. But I think, having a dedicated couple, 3 hours, for the new member orientation is something that is important. We will not be able to, I guess, feed anyone if we do it virtually. But I think virtually may also be an opportunity for greater audience participation. So if there's anyone, currently on the board who is interested in, being on a small committee of folks that pulls together that new member orientation, I guess you can let Eleazar and I know. And for that matter, I would appreciate your thoughts on whether we want to set the date for the orientation sometime in June or take advantage of July.
I would vote for doing it.
Back to you, Elliot.
I'd vote for doing it in July for the reasons that you and Jim gave.
I second that.
But like,
So I think what would be useful,
Right.
any other,
I actually like what you said.
yeah, go ahead.
That's pretty smart. Because I feel like being I think I have like 3-4 years in the board. One of the biggest things that I did find powerful was the ability to have that binder and listening to the other committees, but also being able to actively engage as to like what type of committee agendas is it that you want to embark on since you're volunteering.
Right, right. Any other thoughts on that? Well, hearing none, it sounds like July is the way to go. Maybe what we can do is ask Ebenezer and Paola to reach out to all of the new members in
I think we have an extremely, when would you like move from that place to a different kind of place
I think the board is gonna have to send Wayne a hotspot.
or something, right? He froze, right? Okay, Wayne? Yeah, now I can hear you. Yeah, you're raising your hand.
Actually, I was speaking to Ebenezer and he seemed frozen.
It's your internet.
Yeah, it's your.
It must be, yeah.
Yeah.
Files
Anyway,
will-
Unfortunately,
Eliezer,
it's
back
definitely
to
Wayne's
you.
internet.
So July? You said July, right? The second week.
July what?
That's what we're trying to figure out, but he doesn't.
Well, we're not going to pick a date at this time. The suggestion was for the office to outreach to the new members and get a sense of a number of available dates in July. And we will then build the program around one of those dates, whichever works best.
Okay, great. So Ebenezer, please make note of and making sure that we have the consensus of the new board members. Make sure that it doesn't conflict with their own schedules, so we can have everyone present, and the board members or the chairs who like to be present and be part of it, please contact me, and then we'll make sure that it takes place. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, all of the committees have to be represented. So if not the chair, the assistant chair, but this is an opportunity for each committee to let the new members know what the committee does in general and what they've been doing recently.
Okay. So we're
Could I
gonna-
suggest?
Who's speaking?
Steve Simon.
Oh, Steve, hi, how are you?
Okay. Could I suggest that we not leave it so open-ended with the new members that we offer them 2 or 3 possible dates and then see which of those dates might be the most convenient one for them? You got to give them some specifics. You can't just leave it completely open-ended and just ask them when they're available.
Steve will work on it.
All right. How many new members are there?
There should be 7.
Seven.
5, 6, or 7.
Okay.
I don't know how many of them are here.
7.
Eleazar, if I may.
Hello?
Hello, yeah, may I just?
Yeah,
add
Natalie.
that-
Yes, please. Yes.
Just a reminder that we did appoint 7 new wonderful people, and one of those new appointees is not able to serve because sadly she was priced out of her apartment and has to leave the neighborhood. So we are working very quickly to get you somebody from that list of applicants to fill that. So you're currently short one of those new appointees. Hopefully by tomorrow or next day, you will have that new name.
Well, let's not criticize anybody for being short.
Okay, andiamo. Next.
All righty. So that's that, right? So we're gonna get the consensus of the new members. And also, Ebenezer, you got that?
Yes.
Okay, good. So we're gonna move along to the committee chair reports. Faye, you have the privilege of being the first one on.
Thank you for the privilege. And good evening, everyone. Good to see you all. Well, on my report, as many of you know, we had a great presentation from the WIN Charter School, presented by Charlie Ortiz, who is the executive director, along with his team. And the proposal that they want to bring the charter school on 181st Street, as we already stated on that presentation, we certainly believe that this is school that it's a unique school, which actually that was Maria words, quoting her words, unique school for for our districts, much needed in our district school. We had the opportunity in that presentation to ask many questions as we could, but there was question that I personally decided not to ask because I felt that I asked most of the questions. But I wanted to make some comment tonight briefly, just for future reference, because I know they will come back to the land committee and then hopefully at the general meeting. But I think there is important information that we didn't touch base on it. I wanted to say that I'm not sure, for example, whether or not they have done any homework in terms of before or prior they considered that location. Besides coming to different community, besides presenting in different committees. But you saw already probably the video, so I don't know if they play the good neighbor policy, so we don't know about that. I also wanted just to say, which I think is highly important, is that the statistic that they presented or they provided, I suggest that need to be reassessed and surely needs to be monitored for all the committees that they have presented, especially, for example, the Youth and Education Committee, the Land Committee, the Economy Committee, and so forth, and Public Safety, I think it's probably Traffic and Public Transportation Committee. I think we need to really keep our eyes, focused on what would be the unfolding of that proposal. And very last, I wanted also to make comment that I wonder, which I didn't ask or pose the question, is that if the students get to choose what instrument they are going to play, or is it that they force a student, or I shouldn't say force a student, or what they basically encourage a student to play or to learn whatever instrument their budget allowed them to teach or so forth. So the reason being is because I know in previous cases in which one student in particular that I know, he wanted to learn to play the, what was it? I think it was the timbales, like we call the timbales. And unfortunately, because of budget constraint, he ended up or forced to take a flute. Today, he hates the flute because he never gets to learn that. So, and these are things that, for example, I forgot to ask. But definitely, I think that we need to keep focus exactly what will be the impact and the, and how this proposal is going to get unfolded. And very last, we suggested that he should contact, as a part of the homework, to contact Gregorio Luperon, previous principal, Mr. Juan Villar, so they can perhaps, ask questions and turn what was the challenges that they was facing at that school when they had Gregorio Luperon initiated in that, in that area, so they can learn from that experience. But again, and last, I think definitely, I think that our committees, those that are allowing this WIM to present, that we should be focused exactly what would be the impact, by bringing this to, if they get allowed actually to have the proposal being approval. Other than that, I wanted to, besides this presentation, I wanted just to ask the district manager and our chairman that, that the Youth and Education Committee was working to put a forum for the community, and I've been speaking to different principals and collecting data and information just to bring that information or to expose that information out in the community. But district manager said that the board and the chairman are preparing a forum, and he also would like for the committee to join the forum instead. But I thought that that was a conversation that was going to take place at the report, either the district manager report or the chairman report. But I would like to hear what exactly is it that is happening with that. Is the board planning to have the forum? Because I think it would be a great idea if the board provide a forum as to what is the experience in Washington High with the COVID. And this is my report. Thank you.
I have a question.
All right. So Curtis, I have you. First is Domingo, Isidro, and then Curtis.
All right. My question is more around, because I'm starting to notice these trends of an influx of charter schools basically bombarding this community. My biggest concern around that is the toll that it's going to have on the public institutions in the community. You have, similar to liquor licenses, you have 500 feet rules, but in this community, you have an overwhelming amount of charter schools, and I'm not sure if Youth and Education could write some sort of resolution, but I think it's important to ask for some sort of moratorium to start assessing the impact that overwhelming a community, because this is specifically happening in predominant communities of color. You don't see an influx of charter schools within the various zip codes within New York City. So I think it's very important to note that I think there should be some sort of call to be able to see what legality there is around being able to call for a moratorium, to be able to analyze the amount of charter schools within predominantly communities of color and the impact that it's having towards like public education. And that's just a suggestion that I have.
Well, thank you for that suggestion. But so far, the only position that our board had taken in conjunction, of course, with our committee is that not to allow charter school to co-locate it in public schools. And I understand that as whatever feeling we may have, or sentiment or whatever we feel about charter school, I think the Department of Education in some way is allowing that situation along with the state. it's the way I see your comment is like, which is, I understand that pretty well. But remember, as I said before, when you asked me the previous question in the last meeting, this is basically in terms of choosing charter school or whether traditional school, you know, different parents, they all have different experiences and different, you know, opinion, which are formed based on their experience that they
My
have had.
question wasn't
But-
necessarily towards that. My question is more towards being able to identify the data of how the overwhelming amount of charter schools within. I'm not saying whether I'm for or I'm against. I'm just raising a concern around the amount of schools, because as a taxpayer, right, we do have to be concerned that we are paying taxes for public education, but yet you have a saturation of charter schools within specific districts. And all I'm asking for is to not to take a position, right? I'm not saying I'm pro or against charter schools, but to be able to take some time to truly analyze the impact that charter schools are having within these districts. That's all I'm saying. I'm not taking any position.
No, no, but you did not let me finish, you know, your question, and we're gonna leave it as that. But yes, I well understood what you said. And yes, that is a question that perhaps the committee as a whole can pose with the Department of Education and bring it to their attention, the influence of charter school that we are having in our district. Let's see what they have to say, because at the end, this is what you wanted actually just to say. That's what I understood, at least. So.
All right, thank you.
This is the
Sally?
No, it's Isidro. Sorry.
Oh, Isidro, sorry, my bad.
Curtis,
Isidro?
Curtis, then Sally.
Okay.
I agree with Domingo. This is an industry that needs to be either checked or have an open eye on it, because too many charter schools already in the Heights. But having said that, Faye, I think that we should have a forum, because there is a strong concern about safety and traffic. And I believe even on economic development for small business, about 5 businesses are going to be displaced here. The concern that I have is that this overwhelming amount of traffic, taking into account that you have the firefighters right there, right in front of it, post office, a senior center, a brand new hotel or 200 rooms right next to it, and having our kids be exposed to all of this traffic could be a problem. We also have the second most dense bus lanes in New York, second only to Flatbush. So we have 6 different buses that go through the Bronx. And you just can imagine the effect that this is going to have on the foot traffic and traffic in general. So this should come to the as a whole to the board, because we have to have different perspective as to how this is going to work, if it's going to work. And that, I just leave it as a comment, not a question.
Okay, but yes, it's a valid comment. And what I wanted to suggest to it is that perhaps we can come up with a resolution from different point of view, which may address from the different point of view, let's say from the traffic transportation, from the youth and education community perspective, and some other community that they may want to think about the subject, and collectively we may pass a resolution highlighting the different point of view that we have, how this influence of charter school is affecting on our community, or demanding perhaps on the Department of Education an explanation why this is happening. That's my thought.
Yes. Thank you, Faye. And I'd like to chime in because I think I had a conversation with Wayne as to being extremely mindful. I think it was Debbie, mostly mindful of the studies that a lot of this. Yeah, I'm sorry, but I did bring a point to Debbie. It could have been as to being mindful and reading carefully the reports on the studies that a lot of these schools make in front of us. There's a specific report on that school on 181st, I think it was page 4, in which it says that they did an assessment study on 180th, in which they count no commercial spaces between Amsterdam and Audubon. And my shop is around there, and that's not the truth. There's a hardware store in the corner of 180th in Amsterdam, and another clinic in 109 on
Those
top
are
of it.
retail,
So
not commercial.
retail, commercial is the
No,
difference between.
they're not the same. Retail and commercial are two different.
But hardware
zoning
stores, a hardware store is considered to be commercial. That's why they
No,
close
no,
because
I'm simply
understand that?
saying that in those studies, if they're talking about zoning uses, if they say there's no commercial is typically office space. What you're talking about is stores, they are retail. So don't confuse the two.
Well,
Right.
they not, at the end of the day, they're not residential, I guess.
Okay.
All right.
And who's the next person?
That would be me.
Curtis and remember Sally.
Thank you for your report, Faye. I really miss being on your committee, serving under your leadership. So my question for you, it pertains to the digital divide. Obviously, we've heard a lot of conversation about communities of color, schools of color who are not provided the laptops and other digital devices to do their work at home. Have you been provided, your committee been provided any updates on how many, if there is a disparity in our community, and if there is, what is being done to address that disparity of those without technology?
Well, what I learned from the district and also from several principals is at that time, maybe a few weeks ago, is that one of the main problems for which a lot of students have not received their equipment is because their parents have not signed the application. So, but then you have principal that have volunteered to do that for them. And this is what has been, the problem. And let me tell you, one of the school in our district that actually have a tremendous amount of equipment is Gregorio Luperon, believe it or not. They got more than what they probably ask.
Okay.
This is just, I don't know how to frame that, but in other words, their student didn't suffer from that.
Okay.
From lack of equipment, but more will come if we get to put together that forum. And I really encourage the board and perhaps different committees who wanted to participate, that we put that forum in, and each of us, provide our own perspective and the different how do you call topic or subject that your committee represents.
Okay.
Thank you. Kathy, the next person.
It's last but not least, Sally.
Miss Fisher.
Yeah, I think Curtis got most of my concerns. I guess given what I'm hearing is going on at schools, I'm concerned that we're not really addressing this in committee. We need to know what the state of affairs is, who has the technology, who has the internet connections, how our students are actually faring. And we're spending a whole lot of time on one charter school. We're not spending a whole lot of time on the rest of the schools in our district. And whether or not we have a town hall or whatever you want to call it, I think that needs to be the focus of your meetings.
The funny thing is that even the charter school that I spoke to, they don't have a problem.
Of course, they have money.
They don't have a problem. But anyway, more to come when we have the forum, if we get to have that forum. But I really would like to have a forum, because we need to inform the community. And we're not going to hear it only from the community, but also from the panel and from the student itself.
But what I'm saying is, regardless of whether or not you call it a special forum, you can make that the focus of your next meeting. I think it needs to be addressed. I'm hearing a lot of things from parents and from teachers of local schools that they're not getting the technology, their kids don't have internet. And I'm really concerned that that's not our focus right now.
Well, let me tell you in very last, not to dominate, the conversation, but I'm preparing to, once I put all this data together and the people that, my colleagues that I'm working with, we're gonna make this document public so people know the experience that, we are having in our community. Back to you, Mr. Chairman.
You're mute.
Yeah, thank you so much, Faye. There were great questions and a lot of things to cover and keep in mind for the next meeting. Thank you, Curtis.
Yeah, actually,
Mr.
I had my
Young.
hand up. I have my hand up for phase.
Do you really?
Yeah, I still do.
Okay, I see it.
But just very briefly, I mean, whenever we get into these discussions about charter schools, what strikes me is not always, but we often seem to forget that the charter schools are in fact, public schools. And in looking at what our questions are, I think it is important to get the facts, but I want to know what those facts are. When we talk about the saturation or oversaturation, I want a better sense of, how many and what size, and also realizing that the Success Academy and the schools that are kind of very politically connected are not necessarily representative of all of the, the charter schools. And some of the discussions we're having, the one in particular that presented to Youth and Education is a facility that's currently operating in Washington Heights and Inwood and is expanding to, I guess, to accommodate the students who are now moving to the next grade. So I just want, when we have these conversations, to have more of the facts laid before me, so I get a sense that we're having, an informed conversation.
Okay, Steve, and then we're gonna wrap it up.
But whatever we come up with and whatever discussion we will have is definitely going to be backed up with data.
Okay.
So,
Steve,
Well,
then we're gonna
with
wrap it up and move on to Curtis's report. Steve.
Okay, I'm a little confused right now as to whether we're talking about having a public forum about the technology issue or charter schools. On the technology issue, I think we need to get to the we need to find out the facts right away, because how are the kids doing remote learning at this point if they don't have the equipment? I think we need to just pick up the phone and call the school district tomorrow.
That's the
And
problem.
find out what percentage of our kids. What's the problem?
No,
As
wait.
we are
Let's
speaking,
just
I
keep the
think
same train of wait. So Steve,
What percent of our kids have? What percent of our kids have the laptops? How are they capable? Do they have the equipment so they can do remote learning?
precisely.
okay, those are great points that a forum I think can resolve. You're saying
No, we don't need a forum for that. We need to pick up the phone and find out the information tomorrow, and then maybe talk to the school district to find out how do we expedite getting the kids the equipment that they must have. I don't think we need to wait a month.
well, but
to have a
we don't know whether they have the equipment or not. So what
yeah, so
you call it?
so let's
You
pick-
first of all, and this is the big problem that we usually incurred in, and I don't want to take your time here, Faye, but before you call 911, there has to be an emergency.
No.
You
call the
just
school
also-
district. Just call.
Well, you
they
call the
must
school
know.
district. Yeah, but okay,
Somebody has to be
I
keeping
get your
track of
point.
this.
Yes,
Okay.
I can
Somebody
get that
must know
data.
how many kids.
I think that
Okay, so if the beginning of the conversation, Faye said that she would get the data. Okay, Faye, thank you. So Steve, the answer is that
Okay.
Faye will pick up the phone and get the data, and then she'll present it
good.
to us.
Or ask
Thank
the
you.
DOE.
Okay.
How about that?
Great
No,
idea.
the
Or ask
district,
DOE, both.
we have it.
All right?
Yes, DOE has
So Curtis.
Yes, I'll be brief. We had a very successful meeting last month. Obviously, there's been a lot of increases in crime, particularly domestic violence issues. So our meeting focused on domestic violence last month. Earlier this month, we invited NIMIC to present on some of their initiatives and what's been going on in the field. I also attended the Public Safety Committee for City Council after hearing that they were going to be cutting substantial amount of funding for domestic violence programs, particularly for NIMIC and other nonprofits that serve domestic violence victims in our community. So our committee moved forward and passed a resolution in support of the continuation of funding, particularly it's a very small amount as it is, it's $9 billion going to programs such as the DOVE program and that impacts our community as well. So that was the context of our meeting, focusing mainly on domestic violence and that particular issue. Are there any questions?
Curtis, were you able to connect with DAs Minaya as far as the task force with the 34th and the 33rd precinct, the one that I looked to in?
I did not connect with them about the task force, but the district attorney's office did attend the meeting, Jocelyn as well as Ellie. They both attended the meeting to give us updates also on domestic violence initiatives in the community. We had both representatives from the 33rd and the 34th there as well. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yes,
Curtis,
sir.
as far as great report. As far as the spike, because as you could see, there's a lot of the disproportionate response to when we talk about social distancing and how certain members of our community are being how policing is enforced differently depending on the community you're from. Is there anything that's being done around that? How, let's say, and I'm not going to tap into it, but you know.
I understand. Yeah. Thankfully, we do not have any summons being given to the people in our community. So there have been none as of the time of our meeting. So I don't know what the update, that was just 2 weeks ago. I haven't heard anything, but as of our meeting, there were none that were giving out. And they said that our community was pretty much moving in a good direction and everyone was, at that point in time, doing a good job following the local ordinances. I know things have changed a little bit because it's warmer outside, so there may be some challenges in the future, but at the time of our meeting, we were in good shape.
Mr. Young, thank you so much once again. I really do thank your work, making us all look good. Deb, transportation.
Hi.
Debbie?
Yep.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Now you can see me. All right. We have on traffic transportation, we had a few things on the agenda. One of which was a reso item, and my apologies, I don't have the reso ready yet because I was late getting it to the person. Bruce Robertson's going to draft this one for us. So that resolution related to a presentation, a long-awaited presentation by DOT on the Riverside Oval area, which has had some significant safety issues, related to how people are coming off the highway and speeding. And, there was actually a pretty bad person was pretty injured, car coming around the bend and hitting her. And she was lucky that she wasn't actually more injured, but I know that this has been a long-standing issue. Anyway, just to give an overview of what the proposal was, primarily at all the key intersections, making things safer, try to slow down the speed of the right turn when you're coming off the northbound highway. And then the 158th Street intersection, which if you do the count is actually a 6-legged intersection, gets a lot of attention to make that hopefully safer and easier to traverse as a pedestrian, and also keep the traffic moving through all those various 6 pieces. But sort of probably the biggest feature that got discussed was that DOT has proposed taking that portion of Riverside between 158th and 160th and making that southbound only. That portion of so we passed a resolution supporting the various DOT changes, but sort of holding off on that one feature to get a little bit more information about sort of what the options were. Maria Luna came and expressed some concerns. So we just want a little more time with that aspect, but overall want to be supportive, or the committee was supportive of addressing the many challenges that area has faced. So that was the first thing. Second thing was we did have the presentation by the Wynn Charter School on the traffic and the impact of cars, etc. A few interesting things to note were that which I hadn't really thought about, which is that one of the things that's going away in this proposal is a parking garage. And so when you take that along with the idea that this is a District 6 priority school, so this is the Washington Heights and Inwood, school. So a lot of kids are walking or arriving by public transportation, et cetera. Like they have less of a distant people arriving from a distance, that that the cars that would be added, because obviously some people will be arriving through some sort of vehicle drop off, is less than the sort of ins and outs on that garage. So they just were like, that's one thing to sort of keep in mind, because obviously this school having an interest on 181st, it's really hard to imagine adding something to the mix there with the numerous bus stops and bus traffic and fire station and post office and a million businesses, etc. So so that is the other thing to remember about this school, is that it's an existing school. It's a school that's adding grades, and so they have some idea. I mean, you're always making a projection, but you have some idea about where your students are coming from because you already have a few grades in place. So you kind of know exactly who these kids are and where they're coming from. So it was a little bit less sort of, it had more precision than perhaps we might have looking at another proposal. Obviously, much of the committee's questioning related to concerns, again, about the complexity of that area and feeling that, the school, the Success Academy school at the end of Cabrini and Fort Washington had obviously caused such dramatic problems. Everybody's very cautious about, being careful with what we're taking on here. Again, some of that is helped with, again, the number of kids that they believe will be arriving on foot, by train, or by bus. They will, I think they're projecting 2 yellow school buses. The drop off and then sort of no standing zone would be on Audubon. I think there was at some point they had asked DOT about 181st, and that's kind of a no-go. So that is what is in front of, as I understand it, DOT in terms of where they would have the yellow buses come in. One of the committee members asked specifically, just going to the conversation that was had earlier about the businesses that are right there on Audubon. You have a check cashing, you have a pharmacy, you have Sky Wireless. So they were like, that's who they have. They've checked the opening hours. So for example, check cashing is open 24 hours a day. They said one thing that helps a little bit is they have a very early arrival time. So they're hoping that because they have everybody in that like 7 to 7:40 range, that they're not interfering so much in that morning moment with the business, the higher traffic moments of the businesses that are right there. And then they have their afternoon dismissal, which is 3:15, 3:45 is one bulk. And then obviously they have some kids who are staying for more after school and then leaving. So, and then I will say, just Eli, to your point, that the comment on 180th, while not accurate, didn't have to do actually with the school itself so much as talking about what your walking path would be depending on where the drop off was and how you would get in the entrance of the building. So I think because on 180th, the new hotel and that big complex is going to have a main entrance on 180th, it was just part of describing what's going to be there, was how I understood that. So again, we spent some time with these folks. There was a lot of the sort of interrogation was on, how firm we feel that that incremental car drop-off number is, and how we can be sure that we're not creating what got created in Success Academy. Again, the idea that this, again, is a Washington Heights Inwood targeted school did a lot to sort of calm that. But on the other hand, this is a really hot spot. So I think everybody is sort of listening cautiously. And then, so I guess that's the high point. Yeah. So anybody
Okay.
have any questions?
Anyone? I don't see any hands raised.
Um,
Catherine?
yeah,
I
wait.
see Liz.
Sorry, just real quick. Natalie's hands up. I'm not sure if it's for this point. So if not, you can lower your hand. There's Sally and then there's Liz.
Sally being first, you're saying?
Yes, the other question that came up in our committee, which y'all apparently didn't address, was the impact on the 181st Street subway station, as well as apparently Fern Senior Center is moving there, so that's another potential impact. And I think both of those need to be addressed by your committee.
That's a fair point, Sally. I take the point. I think typically what happens with us is that, you know, the subway doesn't get you're right, it doesn't get that same treatment of like looking at capacity, because it's sort of like the subway is the subway. But you're right about the senior center as well. That's going to be, you know, the people are going to be going in from that side as well. Okay, thank you.
Is it Liz? Was it?
Yeah. I just want to thank you for your prompt attention to that accident coming off the highway that was outside of my building. And
yeah.
I didn't witness it, I heard it, and was outside within seconds. And it was pretty traumatic, and it's not uncommon. So I'm grateful for any solutions that you can get DOT to pull out of whatever is their toolbox.
Yeah, and thank you, you know, for getting, I mean, you guys really have been the early warning sign, and I'm so sad that it came to, like, you know, not just sign damage and somebody was so hurt. So thank you for being the eyes on that situation and the introducer.
Thank you.
Unless we have another question, I'd like to move on to the business development report. Domingo, you ready? Domingo, 1. Domingo, 2.
He's there.
He
just
texted
muted.
me
Is
that
it
his
muted
computer's
himself?
frozen, so give him a few seconds.
What's he having? Computer issues?
Yeah, he said that his computer's frozen, so just give him a few seconds. If you want, you can move to the next one and then we can go back.
All right, so Mr. Wayne?
Okay, so the land use committee met, and I think Ebenezer mentioned we used the WebEx platform. We were introduced, I think, at the last either general or executive committee meeting to the new planner with the Manhattan Borough President's Office, who will be working with CB12, and that's Tim Anderson. So we had Tim Anderson as well as Annie White from Department of City Planning and Ryan Coates from Department of City Planning as our guests, and basically provided an update on some of the planning and zoning initiatives that the board and the committee have focused on, you know, in the past few years. And of course, you know, we started out with the Inwood rezoning, but we also discussed our resolutions asking for a district-wide contextual rezoning of the C83 districts, and this conversation that we were just having about the Wynn Charter School. I mean, the only reason why a special permit is needed to renovate that existing building for school use is because city planning has not acted on the resolution we passed several years ago, pointing out that C8, which is heavily focused on automotive use, is not something that's conducive to any of the mixed use developments that are needed in the community. The solar access resolution is something else we discussed. There are a number of resolutions pertaining to historic preservation in Washington Heights and Inwood. And of course, there is the district-wide neighborhood planning and land use study that CB12 undertook with City College and completed in 2007. So we discuss aspects of all of these, with them, and promised to, and in fact, recently just followed up by providing copies to them so that our planning reps can come up to speed with some of the things we were discussing. We did get into some more specific conversation on the commitments that the city made in conjunction with the Inwood rezoning, and more specifically, since the rezoning was, challenged and overturned, is the city sticking to those commitments? And one of the things that we charged city planning with doing was reporting back, to us, and we were advised that they have reached out to both the mayor's office and to the Economic Development Corporation. And we should remember that the Inwood rezoning was not run or spearheaded by city planning, which is unusual. It was spearheaded by EDC. So we're asking city planning to give us updates on something that it did not initiate, but we were told that they have made some initial contacts. They don't have any special or particular updates for us now. But one of the things that we discussed probably at the February general meeting, because we were still meeting in person, is it's not necessarily clear that it makes sense for land use and only land use to follow up and get updates on these commitments, because the commitments cut across multiple committees. It was suggested a couple months ago, and I'm raising the suggestion once again, that all committees take a look at the letter that was signed by the mayor's office, I think by the deputy mayor, that outlines what the commitments are, to identify those commitments that pertain to your committees, and then to reach out either to the committee and EDC, or EDC as the lead, to have them report to those committees on what they are doing with those specific ones. Land use will, of course, continue to follow up on planning and zoning related commitments. But for example, Steve Simon pointing out, wearing his Parks hat, that Parks Department is in fact, advancing some of the parks commitments, and it would make sense for Parks and Cultural Affairs, as opposed to land use, to speak to them about those. But I'm just pointing out for everyone, because this is the second time we're having the conversation. It also was not clear if the city had moved to appeal the overturning of the Inwood rezoning. I found out today from city planning that the city, in fact, did file paper, but because of the COVID virus shutdown, the lawsuit has not moved forward, but yes, they have filed for an appeal. So one of the questions that we raised at this meeting and a meeting 2 months ago is, would the city continue to honor the commitments if there is no rezoning in place? It sounds like there is a tacit or an actual commitment to move forward, but it also sounds like the overturning of the rezoning, is not the end of the story. There are more chapters to come. And another point that we raised is, as everyone knows, there is a local law 97, which is basically the city's Climate Mobilization Act. One of the points that was raised by OC is, well, what are the zoning, what are the planning implications of this Climate Mobilization Act? And that's something that we thought was an excellent topic to have city planning come back to us, perhaps in September, when they have opportunity to pull together a more thorough presentation and discussion to help us understand, while that local law is focused on, sustainability and climate change, what does it mean in terms of planning and zoning, and what should we be looking at and advocating for? And so that basically were, the topics. There were no resolutions passed, as we pointed out, that the Washington Heights Inwood charter school was referred to 3 committees, not because of the land use aspect of that, which is basically all the BSA application is asking for. It's asking for permission to issue a special permit to allow a school use in the building. But we thought, given the discussion of the environmental impact statement and the traffic issues and, you know, the school being a school, that we should give an opportunity for, once again, those committees that focus specifically on those topics to have a discussion and then have them come back to us. But also the environmental impact study and the traffic studies were not finished in February when it was presented to us. And that's basically my summary of the land use meeting.
Thank you, very instructive. Domingo,
Domingo's the one with the hand.
Okay, all right, good enough.
Wayne, is my understanding that once an expenditure has been certified, there is no going back. Is that correct?
What does that mean?
You see how every time the city, like a lot of the promises that the city has, added as part of the negotiation, a lot of those have already been certified. For instance, the parks, being able to work on Monsignor Kent is already a project that's already been certified by the city. So the money has been allotted already. And Liz, correct me if I'm wrong, that was something that was said.
I don't know if that is the specific project to which Steve Simon referred, but Steve Simon is the one who pointed out exactly what you're saying, that City Parks is in fact moving with you know, some of the commitments that were listed. So we're not saying that they are not, but the question is, we did not know.
So I will say that every month at our, as Domingo knows from his experience having been on the committee, we do get a report, a capital and programming update from the Parks Department about the various expenditures and investments throughout the district, some of which are routine investments through the commitments of our city council members, other elected officials, and some of which are commitments pursuant to the Inwood rezoning. So that's something that we're doing monthly. What other committees do, I cannot say, but on my committee, we do hold parks accountable to their commitments. And I'm going to mute myself right now.
Okay, so Wayne, basically, so my question would be, is there a way that they could provide an update as far as what expenditure has already been certified and what might not necessarily happen as part of the negotiations with the rezoning?
Well, Domingo, that in part is what land use is suggesting, that each committee take the responsibility for asking that question for the commitments that fall under their jurisdiction. But also remember, these are commitments over a 10-year period or more. So it's not just commitments for now. You know, there are, you know, parks and housing and infrastructure things that are, you know, were discussions for, you know, the next decade. So that's why I think it's important for the committees to stay on top of not just what's happening now, but what are the you know, when are other projects scheduled to begin, and what is the commitment for that? And I would also think that when we're doing our annual, you know, capital and expense budget items, the extent to which there are projects that are supposed to be happening, you know, within the fiscal year that we're working on, we might want to make sure that we are, you know, stressing the importance of those projects that are in the commitments.
Steve, I think so you're raising your hand and you have a question, and then we'll wrap it up.
No, I just want to respond to Wayne's point. Monsignor Kent Playground, in fact, is the project that I referred to at the land use meeting, and that I also reported on at the Parks and Cultural Affairs Committee meeting, that project is moving forward. And we finished speaking for the Parks Department, we finished the design work, and it's now proceeding hopefully towards a bidding process.
Thanks. Domingo, if you want to move on,
Wait,
have your report.
just
Is
a
it-
quick request. I'm sorry, I can't find the raised hand. Never mind.
Okay.
If the office could please just resend that document. I mean, we all have it, but it's not as accessible for some of us where it may be buried in our emails. If the office could just resend that document, and then if each of the committee chairs can just go through and mark it up with whatever are the relevant items for their committee, and then follow up with their agencies.
I know, but should we,
Okay.
I mean, I think
Yeah.
EDC, I believe, is responsible for tracking all of that information. And
In an ideal
I-
world, yes, but there's no reason why we as committee chairs can't, reach out to EDC and say, and ask for a status update, or why we can't reach out to
Yeah, but
our
why-
relevant
Okay.
but why should
Thank-
EDC get
I
10 different?
I think we should stay in line here
Why
instead
can't
of.
the board just send in one inquiry and just ask for an overall update?
Is that a question
Great
to,
idea.
is that a question to Wayne's presentation?
No,
that's just-
it's a question to Wayne's
that's a
presentation,
suggestion.
but it's a question to you as the
I
chair.
can have the both of you speak at the same time. Can I have, Steve, can you please? I
No, my
couldn't really get it.
suggestion for you is for either you or Ebenezer to contact EDC and just ask them to send us an overall update. Listen, for all I know, it may even be on their website. They were supposed to have a tracker on their website for all of the commitments.
Got it. I'll give a call to Charlie tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly, right.
All right, thanks. Call Charlie. All right,
Not just
Domingo.
me, Charlie.
All right, Domingo, and then Ariel is next. No, Steve is next after Domingo.
Okay, perfect. So basically, as I was saying before, previously, as when the pandemic hit, we were supposed to have a meeting the following day, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So we had to pivot temporarily to be able to address the issues that our communities were facing. Seeing how a lot of the meetings were conducted, I felt like there wasn't enough guidance to be able to conduct an effective virtual meeting. So what we started to do was, in discussion with my committee, we were able to just discuss temporarily doing virtual events as a way of being able to address the needs while the pandemic was at its peak or uncertain times. So we hosted an event April 7th called a resource discussion during the pandemic. It was a webinar for small businesses, just basically discussing what resources were available. We had 100 participants attend. We had a bilingual legal aid. A lot of the conversations that small businesses had was that was had with small businesses was the need for pro bono lawyers to be able to provide certain legal guidances during these uncertain times. So we partnered up with the Legal Aid Society to provide a small business legal advice and support. We have 45 small businesses attend. And then May 5th, some valid concerns during the last meeting where he felt that I guess that I didn't communicate enough to him. And we were able to do another event where we brought in more legal representation, and the flyer was distributed towards his businesses. We had an additional 37 participants attend, which 2 of them were new businesses. So thank you, Isidro. And just moving forward, I just want to say that we will be reconvening our meeting in June 2nd at 6:30. We have confirmed several individuals to speak. Cirilo from 809 will be discussing just some updates and his experience during these turbulent times to be able to determine what further direction as a community board or as a committee we could be providing assistance to small businesses. We've also identified an owner of a salon and a barbershop and we're also trying to reach out to nightlife and different sectors within the community to be able to get basically an understanding of what they're experiencing and what are some of the areas that they feel they need more support. And then we identify what we could do towards the summer to be able to alleviate or bridge a lot of the the situations that they're experiencing. That's my report. If anybody has any questions, let me know.
His answer is no.
So
Steve?
we have Curtis.
Oh, Curtis has a
and
question?
Isidro.
Yeah,
Curtis,
Curtis
Steve, and
and Isidro.
Isidro.
Yeah, thank you, Domingo. I just have a question. I've noticed that there's been a lot of conversation about street cafes and serving from the street, alcohol, restaurants. I know that this has been an issue we have, I think in the past. So have you, or do you plan to find a way to address this issue? And what are your thoughts on that so far?
I'm a little bit confused as far as street cafes. Do you mean
sidewalk cafes?
Sidewalk cafes. I mean, meaning that right now there's a big push for restaurants to social distance, right? So some restaurants are asking to be able to.
That's a question to Isidro.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm not. As far as my stance on sidewalk cafes, I would say it all depends on if they have all the proper health code guidances, and I'm not too familiar on the topic per se. But there's sidewalk cafes is as Washington Heights. Like my entire life I've seen them. But
yeah,
I'm not
That's
sure
under
what
licensing.
We'll save it for.
you mean by that.
Yeah, it is pretty much. It's pretty much within this.
Yes, I understand. I just want to say that it is not just a licensing committee issue; it's a business and licensing issue. But Isidro, you can go forth.
All right, Isidro, save
Actually,
it for you.
sorry, we have stacks. So Steve and then it's Isidro.
Okay. You said Steve, right?
Yeah, Steve Simon. Yeah.
Oh, okay, thank you. I wasn't going to speak on this particular point, but I don't think the sidewalk cafes are in business at this point. And but I think what I gather from looking at Facebook is that we do have a problem on the Dyckman strip west of Broadway, where maybe even though the businesses are not open, or maybe they are just serving takeout food and drinks, apparently there have been large crowds assembling on the street because the street is also closed to traffic. So I think that particular street may be an issue west of Broadway. What I wanted to say is I wanted to commend Domingo for the work he's doing on the outreach to businesses, putting them together with legal aid, getting them information. And when it comes to any discussion about what the community board has done during this pandemic, what service we provided to the community, I think what your committee is doing in this vein should be towards the top of that list. There's a good work.
Thank you, Steve.
Appreciate that. Let's we have another question. Isidro, right?
Wait, give me 1 second, because I'm sorry. This is back to Curtis. Curtis, for some reason, I was making the correlation between sidewalk cafes and the street vendors. I'm sorry, like there's so much on my mind. But yeah, our sidewalk cafes, I haven't necessarily seen them besides like in certain instances, some businesses using those dividers as a way of being able to maintain a certain line and maintain social distancing.
Right. Okay, just wanted to add that I think it's going to be an issue because some businesses may not be able to get people inside, and they eventually will have to shut down if they don't have business. So they're going to have to just either figure out ways to serve outside in the future.
Correct.
So that's my point. That's the connection.
Okay, Curtis, if you have any business in mind, just feel free to let me know. I'll reach out to them so that we could get experience and we can add them to the agenda next month so that they could be able to elaborate on, because what people fail to understand is a lot of these individuals have certain ideas. We just need to be able to make certain connections and be able to connect them to the city so that they're not, let's say, disproportionately targeted. you know, and there's an understanding of what are potential creative avenues that could be taken towards being able to do business and keep our businesses afloat.
I'll email you.
Okay.
All right. Thank you,
So,
Kurt.
Cesar, you have a question? Because I wanted to chime in on, because there was a newspaper article on the sidewalk cafeterias that the city was planning to open up the process and speed it up so that they can get the permits. But that's really Cedr's territory. So unless you had a question for Domingo?
Yes, so I have a question, and not question, I have a statement to answer the questions that were raised and an update as well. I can answer the questions that were raised concerning the sidewalk.
Okay.
So for this to function, it has to have the DOT blessings, first of all. It has to have the Department of Sanitation, Department of Consumer Affairs, and the SLA. If you're going to extend legal selling into the streets, that has to have the approval of the SLA. And the same applies also for Consumer Affairs, which has the jurisdiction of sidewalk cafes. I submit an application to monitor the one on Dykeman from Broadway to Seaman. I have a meeting with our DOT. There'll be more meetings because a lot of complexities that have to be dealt with in order to have this expanded for the restaurants. There has been an ask from the Plaza 175th and Broadway, and there has been another ask on 202nd Street between 9th and 10th Avenue. In order for this to be executed, there has to be a support from a nonprofit from the area. So I volunteer mine and the team that I have to see how we can work on Dykeman. But still a lot of meetings to be had with the merchants and also the councilman, and obviously DOT, Consumer Affairs, and SLA, as you all said. So it's a whole package. It's a lot of different agencies that have to be dealt with and intertwined. That was just
Isidro, as part of business development, is it possible for me to participate in those meetings just so I could provide an input as far as from the business development standpoint?
No doubt. You get, because we had preliminary meetings to have this as a nonprofit, to have the application done as a nonprofit. So I've done that already. So the next step would be to meet with you and the merchants and some other stakeholders as well. Indeed.
Okay, guys. Thank you very, very much. I love the collaboration. I think that's what we're here for. We rise together is what says in Lisa's background. So I'm going to continue to use that for the rest of our meeting. So really, really great. Steve Simon?
Wait, we have Liz still with her hand, and then Ariel, I'm not sure if your question's for Domingo.
Oh, yeah, see, on Ariel too.
Yeah.
Liz, you go. Okay.
Yeah, just a quick question. There's been, as a person who lives mere feet from that strip on Dykeman Street, there seem to be sort of two different issues with public drinking. One of them, and it's happening not just on Dykeman Street, it's happening in a couple places on 187th Street as well, where people are getting takeout alcohol from places that are now able to sell like drinks to go. If you get food to take out, you can also get a pitcher of margaritas or, you know, a frozen whatever in a sippy cup. And people are just walking around drinking, which if you're just walking around drinking is one thing, but there's a lot of congregating and drinking, and some of it is outside of the establishments where they've clearly bought it at the establishment. And so I think there should be some involvement and some responsibility of the establishment. And some of it is people are just randomly hanging out in their cars, cranking up the boom boxes, drinking whatever it is they're drinking, which may or may not have been purchased from a place. And there's a whole, you know, it's partly a licensing issue since some of the alcohol is coming from businesses. It's partly a business development issue because I think that the business committee can maybe take a role in talking to people about best practices. And it's partly a public safety issue to the extent that there's an enforcement piece. So I'm not suggesting that we adjudicate it here, but I would just encourage all three of those committees to kind of discuss like what's a good way of getting some better enforcement on this.
Well,
Okay.
I have. Could I say
It's
something?
a better compliance, really.
I want to say something real quick. Liz, and I completely understand your concern. But there's always different ways of being able to tackle a situation by layering it and getting to usually to the root of it. My suggestion is let's have a deeper conversation and let's try to look into ways of being able to elaborate much more. You hear me?
Yeah.
Much more social educational campaigns.
Yes.
Than seeking some sort of policing, because unfortunately, we're at the back end of the stick when it comes to disproportionality and how police have like certain situations seems to escalate more when dealing with a particular population. So I think we should discuss
100%.
offline
Okay.
just strategies. I would like Curtis to participate as well.
100%.
Strategies that we could think of to be able to do like certain educational campaigns, whether it be posters and we get it through the community board budget and just being able to hit some of these spots.
Yes.
Thank you. Great answer. So Ariel, and then we're gonna wrap it up. And for the sake of trying to finish on time, it's 9:00, and I still have 7 other committee chairs to present. So let's keep questions and answers in a 1-minute rebuttal so we can finish on time. We enjoy the conversation, but we gotta appreciate each other's time. So Ariel, don't mean to start with you though. I don't want you to feel some kind of way.
No, I appreciate it. I was actually going to, I guess, hop onto some of those kind of questions and concerns there, because I generally have been trying to still stay active in the community, right? And I'll go around in parts of Washington Heights or Inwood, and I kind of am observing, given I'm not saying there's the very real data right now, but I'm kind of observing that you're not necessarily seeing as much business activity in certain parts of the community. I think that kind of going back to that discussion about, well, what businesses are able to operate right now, specifically when you're talking about those businesses that are serving alcohol, I'm kind of just on the, I'm not upset about it. I went to Uptown Garrison and got one of the drinks there. But I think that I'm just a bit concerned about, well, okay, if that business can open and effectively serve, why is it that we're not necessarily, having that being as visible on other parts of Broadway? I think that there are a number of businesses that could really use just that activity at this moment. I'm not necessarily saying that, we necessarily need to have a sidewalk cafe, because sometimes we just look at, our neighborhood. The sidewalks are pretty small in certain areas, which of course makes it difficult in that instance. But I do think that we need to find certain ways. If, we're finding that one business in one part of a community can be active, why is it that we need to find ways to try and make sure that that's the same for a lot of others? So I just want to know, has there been some sort of discussion that's going on about how we can get some of those other businesses to maybe have some activity, have some social, distance appropriate selling of products? And, what I'll also secondly say is, are we having a discussion right now with a lot of small businesses that are having to go through third-party delivery services? I think that right now across the entire city, we're hearing so much about what people are calling just robbery at this point, where these services are allowed to just price gouge and just charge as much as they want, taking off really what can be, a third of the entire cost of a $21 meal. And it's just completely destroying a lot of small businesses' opportunities to stay active.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, so I could address that real briefly, Ariel. 2 things to your point, right? As far as what businesses could operate, that's totally up to what the governor would determine to be an essential business. Unfortunately, we could provide certain input as to like creative ways to operate, but with the stay-at-home order, there's only so much that certain businesses could like, only certain type of businesses, unless you apply for this waiver, this sort of waiver, could operate. And then as far as your other point in regards to I think it all boils down to us being able to understand that this is just the beginning, and that we just have to brace ourselves and start structuring ourselves to be able to be active participants when the shit hits the fan. You know what I'm saying?
Thank you.
So I think it's all about gathering as much information as we can, and then just making sure that we have the proper networks to be able to provide the information.
Thanks, Domingo. And for the sake of moving along, Steve Simon and Ariel, if you will.
All right, well, let me just interject on the previous discussion that under the governor's order, all restaurants are able to provide takeout and delivery. And so I think that's what people were alluding to earlier. So if the Uptown Garrison can do it, any other restaurant and many other restaurants in our district are in fact now open specifically for takeout and delivery. And that's where there are some complications, as Liz Ritter described them. In terms of my committee report, we also had a presentation from the Wynn Music Community Charter School. We had a thorough discussion in which I think they largely satisfied the questions we had regarding noise, air quality, hazardous materials, solid waste management, sanitation, water and sewer infrastructure. We have probably a couple of recommendations which we will forward to the Land Use Committee for inclusion in whatever resolution comes out of that committee. We did recommend that the school work with its two neighbors in the adjoining building, the Arkford Washington Senior Center and the Esperanza Center. And we also suggested that they meet with the CEDRO to get acquainted with the bid. They were not aware that there was a bid on that street. And we suggested that maybe a CEDRO could help them introduce them to the other businesses on the block, their surrounding neighbors. We had a presentation from the health department. There is a new testing site for antibodies in North Manhattan at the health department facility at 21 Old Broadway, which is at 126th Street. And as it turns out, Councilmember Levine, who also called into our meeting, took an antibody test. It turned out positive, and he's going to be donating plasma. Subsequent to my meeting, the mayor also announced that there's a new testing site in Washington Heights for diagnostic testing. This is specifically for people who have symptoms of COVID-19, or people who have been in contact with people who have symptoms, or people who work, for instance, in nursing homes and in similar positions. The testing site is at the Highbridge Recreation Center at Amsterdam Avenue and 173rd Street. It's a pretty large operation. It just opened up today. It's open every day from 9 a.m. to 7. No appointments are necessary. You should bring people. I will. I'm trying to get a flyer, which I can ask the community board to circulate. An ID is required. You should bring an insurance card, but there are no out-of-pocket costs. It's basically free of charge. New York Presbyterian reported that the overall number of cases has declined at the hospital, but again, they are not. It's very frustrating. They are not providing us with statistics by hospitals within their system. So we don't have any specific statistics for the Milstein Hospital or for the Allen Hospital. All they've told us is that in April, throughout their entire system, they had 2,500 cases. As of May the 6th, the day before our meeting, it was down to 1,349. And since the beginning of the COVID crisis, they've discharged 8,000 patients. We do not know how many passed away and did not survive. So I think that's a shortcoming. It would be good if the hospital was open to providing us with all that specific information, especially with respect to the two hospitals within our district. The field hospital at Bakerfield, as far as I know, is still in place and is still in use. The Columbia University Irving Medical Center gave us a report that in the wake of the suicide by Dr. Breen, we discussed her suicide at the last executive committee meeting. She was the head of emergency medicine at the Allen Hospital. They were certainly devastated by that death, and they have told us that they've increased their mental health efforts with respect to their staff. They're planning to have a community research forum on work being done in the medical center on COVID-19 in June. They've offered to have the board as a co-sponsor. I don't know, Ellie, did you get back to them to tell them that was okay?
Can you repeat that again?
They offered to have the community board as a co-sponsor of a community forum that they're planning to
Yes.
have on COVID-19. So you
Yes.
did tell them, yes.
Yes,
Very
I
good.
reached out, yes.
Okay, very good. Okay, and then we spent, of course, a lot of time talking to Isabella, to Betty Lehman about the issue that arose there of the high number of deaths that have occurred at Isabella and with patients who had been at Isabella and then later passed away at local hospitals. And we very closely questioned Betty on this issue, and she reports that that Isabella has reported everything to the state, that the state health department had all of this information all along, that they knew about the deaths that took place both at the nursing home, confirmed deaths and presumed deaths, as well as the deaths that occurred at local hospitals, that the state health department only up until recently only officially reported the confirmed deaths, which is why as of the last meeting, we were under the impression that there had been only a total of 20 deaths at Isabella, and the state had not reported the presumed deaths and was not reporting the deaths that occurred elsewhere. So we were not aware of, certainly were taken by surprise to find out that 98 patients at Isabella had passed away, and there have been a few in the last couple of weeks. So Betty, and I tell you, when you look at the, as I've been doing, looking at the state reports of all of the nursing homes throughout the state, this is not an issue limited to Isabella. There are at least four other nursing homes in Manhattan who have had a higher percentage of deaths based on their capacity. You know, you look at Isabella, they have a larger number of deaths because they also are one of the largest nursing homes in the state with 705 beds. But there's one hospital in Queens which has fewer beds and has had 82 confirmed deaths. So this is a problem throughout the system, and I think, as Betty said and as others have pointed out, part of this, the reason can probably be traced back to the fact that they were given a low priority in the provision of PPE, in personal protective equipment. Up until recently, no effort was really made to provide them with adequate supplies of PPE. Which they fortunately now have, and nobody was being tested. Only until recently did they finally get testing equipment, and only now is the state health department, in the wake of these reports, the state health department has been going through the nursing home, has been doing inspections, and is testing all the patients. And part of the factor here also, which the state has stopped doing, the state ordered hospitals to discharge people who had COVID-19, who had maybe mild cases or weren't considered the most severe. They were being discharged back to nursing homes. And I've asked for a breakdown of the number of such patients who did not originate at Isabella, but were discharged from hospitals, ended up being sent to Isabella, and then did not survive. So that's a factor that has to be taken into account. So the state health department is doing its investigation. The attorney general is doing an investigation in response to a request from, I believe, Congressman Espaillat. And I'm going to be asking for those reports because we need to know exactly what those findings are. According to Betty, the state health department has cleared them, has told them that they have no violations, but has not yet issued a written report. We need to have those written reports. We need to know exactly what the investigators have found and whether or not there's any possible impropriety or things that Isabella did wrong. But again, it looks as though it's a statewide issue, and you could look at nursing homes around the state. Many of them have got at least 4 of them in Manhattan that have higher percentages of deaths than occurred at Isabella. And there are high numbers all over the place. It's a tragedy across the board.
Thank you, Stephen. Catherine, you have a stack? I saw the
Yeah.
one hand I saw first was Gerard, or
Yeah, Gerard, followed by OC, and wrapping up with Curtis.
no, I think Daryl Cochrane is also been one of the first ones. I just got texted. So I think it's
Oh, okay. I didn't
Gerard
see his
and
hand up,
then Daryl. Yeah, I don't know. There's something wrong with his computer. They couldn't bring his hand up.
Okay.
My question was earlier for Domingo. Domingo, and I don't know that you've had the answer to this, but surely at some point, businesses in our community are going to be permitted to open. Our restaurant, our nightlife, they're going to be permitted to open with significantly reduced occupancies, and they're going to probably have to start to pay back 60, 90 days in rent. What is the state, city, and others doing to support and work with these businesses that when they open at reduced occupancies, at full occupancies, many of these businesses were challenged to pay their rent. If they open, and they will open by order of the state with reduced occupancies, how can they do this without some help or assistance from the city and state?
And I'll keep it brief. I think it all has to do with subsidies. The feds have to step in and be able to provide certain micro grants. But at the end of the day, this is a burden that has to be taken up by society and not just by individual business owners. So if there are going to be certain guidelines, I think it's extremely important for there to be the subsidies to be able to guarantee the livelihood of these businesses while there's a full lift of whatever hinders them from being able to function at full capacity.
But from what you say, is the city's economic development or any? Do you see any boots on the ground from the city and the state?
What I see is a lot of rhetoric, a lot of chat, but I haven't necessarily seen anything tangible that I could refer a business besides the grants and the loans.
Okay, all right, thank you,
Gerard.
Appreciate it.
As a business, Gerard.
Yes.
As a business person, a lot of chat, a lot of noise, no results.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
my heart goes out to them. I wish them all the well. I mean,
just pray for me. Daryl.
No, this was really just a comment to answer part of Ariel's question from earlier. I know the city council has legislation they're looking at in terms of price gouging for delivery, food delivery. So I couldn't copy and paste the article, but there's an article from New York Eater from last week. So if you go to ny.eater.com, you can see that from May 12th.
I think that bill was passed yesterday.
Yes. It was a city council bill, on price gouging and the delivery companies as Uber.
They're limited now to maybe 15 or 20% or something like that.
Okay. Yes, Isidro, you're raising your hand?
Yes.
Catherine, I'm sorry, Isidro. Was there anyone else?
Next.
Yeah,
Who was
no,
next?
Curtis. Wait, sorry, you're right. It's OC followed by Curtis.
Yeah.
So
Isidro, can you save that as part of your presentation? Because I know that you were trying to get a resolution to pass that bill, and you can further explain the whole thing. Can you do that? Okay,
sure.
Thanks.
Steve, I just want to kind of refresh everyone's memory about what happened at the last meeting, that Betty report that 13 people died at Isabella, and 2 days later we heard from Cuomo and reports of misreporting of the number of deaths from Isabella. And that when back then it was 95. I don't know if it was 98, but 95, that's high enough. So do you know what happened in between? How is it possible that 2 days before Cuomo's report, we got a report at the executive committee that there were 13 deaths at Isabella?
Well, actually, I reported based on the most recent state health department report, which at that point only included confirmed deaths that occurred at the nursing home itself. And it turns out that Isabella was reporting 4 different categories of deaths, confirmed and presumed deaths at the nursing home, and confirmed and presumed deaths that occurred at hospitals. But the state health department was only releasing data on the confirmed deaths at the nursing home itself. So I reported at maybe it was at the board meeting that there were 13 deaths. And she corrected me and said, no, at that point, we're now reporting 20. And the state health department was apparently telling them that's all they should be putting out publicly. And so apparently they felt constrained by what the state health department was instructing them to do. And only in the last couple of weeks has the state health department now issued reports that include the presumed deaths at the nursing home. So as of yesterday, there are 23 confirmed deaths at the nursing home and 44 presumed deaths, again, at the nursing home. But the nursing homes apparently are not required, and this is a problem with the state health department, maybe. They're not required to report deaths that occur at the hospitals. Those deaths are the responsibility of the hospitals to report. And our problem right now is we don't have that data from our own hospital. So I mean, I think as Isabella, Isabella, I think, I'm not happy about the, Isabella, I don't know if they could have just ignored the state health department and given us all of the data, or whether or not they were, I don't know that we'll ever find out the complete story, but maybe we will when the state health department and the and maybe more likely when the Attorney General's report comes out and we find out how did this happen. We need those reports.
Alrighty.
By zip code, please.
Excuse me?
Curtis.
By zip code.
Curtis?
Well, I've also asked for zip code information from the city health department, and the city health department, at least apparently, is planning to release that information. So we don't have zip code information right now either.
Okay, Curtis, then we're gonna wrap it up for the next
I'm sorry.
presentation.
The only zip code information we have are positive tests. We don't have any zip code information based on hospitalization or on deaths, only on positive tests.
Okay, thank you.
I'll
Curtis,
yield my question.
you yield it?
Yes.
To whom?
To Liz.
Oh, to Liz?
Yeah.
Sorry, Steve said what I said and I meant to lower my hand.
I don't have a question, so whoever's next can go next.
Okay, great. Any more? No one else? Okay, so Ariel, next presentation to the Housing and Human Services Committee.
Yes, hi everyone.
Thank you.
So just to briefly go over this past month, in general, I know there's a lot of questions, but I just want to get to just the description of this past month's meeting. We specifically had a presentation done by the Assembly member, Carmen De La Rosa. She wanted to actually come forward to discuss a piece of legislation that she had already been working on prior. It was at that time being called an Excluded Worker Bailout Fund, specifically meant to really offer financial services to those that were not necessarily eligible for a lot of really the human resources and many benefits that many individuals need at this time. Whether you're talking about someone that is specifically undocumented or someone that simply just would not qualify under the current guidelines, even with the expanded, public pandemic, I forget the full acronym, but essentially just the extended benefits that were offered to many that were unemployed now. It was an opportunity for individuals to then get some sort of relief in the event that you were simply losing your line of work. I specifically presented a great deal of data that is talking about what's happening for many individuals that are identifying as undocumented. There is already an estimate from multiple organizations that are focused on how much tax dollars are actually being contributed to in the state of New York. Just in the year of 2017, I stated this to the committee. It was already estimated that $1.1 billion were being allocated in that year alone by those that were using either ITIN numbers or really just using various services and contributing in the public sector as a result of really just their own willingness. So there has been really just I think just an unaccounted amount of funding that has been given that hasn't necessarily been given right on back to the communities that are a part of this community, specifically throughout the city and the state. So we are now going to be hopefully reviewing the piece of legislation now that it's been presented. She has been working alongside Senator Jessica Ramos to ensure that this was being put forward once they came back into session. So there are bill numbers. They're going to be discussed a bit more in detail this coming month. The second issue we brought up this month was in relation to really those that are identifying as homeless at this time. You have seen the news. They've been talking about what they're trying to really do to revamp a lot of the Department of Homeless Services, really their own facilities, how they can really allocate proper space in the midst of all this. And lastly, I just want to highlight here that we were really under pressure this month. As many of you saw, I sent out an email in relation to a resolution that we tried to get through. Unfortunately, we just ran out of time. That language was essentially carrying over many of the things that we had discussed prior from a previous 2019 resolution that supported essentially not having any increases. This year, we, of course, were discussing some of the more recent data that was made available, making it more evident as to why we did not need an increase at this time. As you'll see, I pretty much took a great deal of the data from whether it be the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, the Rent Guidelines Board's 2020 study for income and affordability, and just a few other resources that are also highlighted in there. The NYU Furman Center is also specifically highlighted. So I spoke. I was speaking earlier with Liz about this. It's really just the concern of the scheduling. Right now, I had pretty much just found out that they actually set a date for a vote. Because of the pandemic, it has not been clear. Right now it's for the 17th. So I think that tonight, if the executive committee would not like to move forward on getting the resolution ratified tonight, it just needs to be known that it will need to be ratified in the coming month when we do have our executive committee meeting on the 15th. Because as I just mentioned, the vote is officially on the 17th of June. So it is more evident now more than ever. I want to just be clear that is just, I think, one of the most important things that we need to get done as a board. And that is my report. Sorry, I'll open up.
Catherine?
Yeah, so it's Liz, followed by Steve, followed by Wayne, and then Curtis.
We're gonna make it at least just 4 questions. So for the sake of time, is 9:35. We still have 4 more presentations. So
Yeah.
rebuttal, please. Let's keep it on 1 minute, please.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
I think that this is an incredibly important issue. As the board chair 20 years ago, Sandra Dulitz, commented so wisely, the work of the board happens in committee. And I really hope that everybody is going to take the opportunity to join in on the Housing and Human Services Committee so that we can really discuss this. We've got I think, really solid wording as a great starting place. I would love to be able to continue this conversation in Ariel's committee at the beginning of June, and then we can all be like pretty well informed so that whatever it is the committee comes up with as a final recommendation, we can just move it right through the executive committee so that we're poised to have a voice to present to the Rent Guidelines Board when they meet on the 17th. But we don't need to do it tonight.
And sorry, I'll also just make note, one of the biggest concerns was that they were going to potentially move up the date. That's kind of the reason why in the email I was saying, thankfully I was right to make sure we moved up our discussion. because they did. Last year, it was on the 4th Tuesday of the month. It just so happens that they've cut meetings and it's moved. So, you know, it's a bit of a hardship on our end.
Okay. I don't see any more hands up. So thank you, Ariel. Great work. So your resolution is really to the dotted line. You've learned a lot from Steve as he made you come back a couple of times last time. So I'm sure that he'll come back and get to it. So thanks to the both of you. So Mary, are you with us? Mary? Mary Anderson, the agent committee. Guys, if there is a comment, please first of all check the Q&A, and there's a comment that refers to your committee or your presentations. You're more than welcome to answer them. It is not really private to a particular person. If it's a question that relates to your presentation, be more than welcome to have you guys answer it for the sake of each one of us being on the same page here.
Ellie, I had my hand up on.
Of course.
For Ariel.
Yeah, I couldn't see it, but yeah, please.
Sorry, what was that?
All right. I think it's too risky to put off this resolution to next month. I think we need to vote on it as a board in May. I think it's consistent with other resolutions we've passed. This is not exactly a new topic. It's consistent with positions we've taken. And if we were to put this off to the executive committee in June, you might as well throw it out the window because it'll be too late to get it before the rent guidelines board. It'll be a useless gesture to send it to them on the 16th if they're having a meeting the very next day. You want to have any impact at all, we need to send it to them following our May board meeting. So I would move, although I do have corrections. I do have a couple of minor corrections. I would move that we adopt this resolution tonight and bring it before the full board meeting in next week.
Second.
Yeah, and I'll flat out just say it. I accept the, you know, of course you're trying to make any amendments.
No, these are not amendments. These are minor corrections.
They're
Minor
copy edits.
corrections. I accept them.
All righty then. Good progress.
Sorry to jump
Loving
in out
it.
of turn, but I will say it's an extremely well-crafted reso, so I got no problem voting for it. So then we do have to like actually have a call the roll because it's a little chaotic to do a vote over Zoom by people just showing their hands. So for OC's benefit, can we do a roll call on that, please?
Everyone, just unmute yourself.
And just to be clear, it's a roll call because technically this is a meeting of the executive committee. The only people who will be asked to vote are members of the executive committee. And then we will vote on it as a board next week as a board.
Thank you, Liz. You are quite correct.
I'll drink to that.
Sounds like Ed McMahon talking to Johnny Carson during the Karnak bit.
Liz, we're ready for you.
OC, can you unmute yourself so you can call the roll?
Yeah. Liz, do you want me to call? Because
Yes,
I don't
please.
have the list. Okay. I don't have the list.
Okay, I can call the roll if you don't mind recording it. First Vice Chair Catherine Diaz. Okay, can whoever's
Sorry.
hosting this just
Sorry,
mute,
I'm here.
unmute everybody?
Yes.
Just answered.
Apologize. Yes.
Second Vice Chair Isidro Medina.
Yes.
Secretary Elizabeth Loris Ritter, I vote yes. Treasurer Gerard Dangle.
Yes.
Assistant Secretary OC Kaminer.
Yes.
Youth and Education Committee Chair Faith Florimon.
Yes.
Public Safety Chair Curtis Young.
Yes.
Traffic and Transportation Chair Debbie Nabavian.
Yes.
Business Development Chair Domingo Estevez.
Yes.
Land Use Chair Wayne Benjamin.
Yes.
Health and Environment Chair Steve Simon.
Yes.
Housing and Human Services Chair Ariel Miranda.
Absolutely, yes.
Concerns of the Aging Chair Mary Anderson.
Mary?
She was on and
She's
she was on. I can't see her.
she's
on
still
the
there. Yeah, she's there, but of course I can't.
Can you go back to Mary?
Sure. Can, Ebenezer, can you call Mary? I don't vote. I already voted. Licensing already voted. IT Task Force Chair Jonathan Nunez Frometa. Is Jonathan still on the call?
Yes, I vote yes.
Thank you. LGBTQI Task Force Chair Richard Allman. I think he's not still on the call. Parliamentary, Jim, do you vote?
No.
No.
Okay. Ebenezer, were you able to reach Mary?
She's still on the line.
Okay,
She's still there.
Okay, I'm gonna mute myself and I'm gonna call Mary and just hold on with the vote. I mean, it's unanimous, but we don't know about Mary. Mary, is that
And
you?
Richard.
Okay, I'm gonna reach out to them. I'll call you back. I'll come back.
Okay.
Okay, can you, what, Mary, are you with us?
Liz is gonna call Mary and Ebenezer will call Richard. So far, 13 members voted
I'm calling
yes.
Richard.
You're calling Richard? We are waiting for Mary and we are waiting for a vote from Richard.
Well, I think we can move the agenda and then come back to it when we get these two votes.
Okay, so I'm gonna, you were next down. I mean, Mary is, so I wanted to have Mary until we get her back. So I'm gonna move to Isidro and then Liz, I'll get back to you. Or you want to be?
Actually, my report is very brief and
Okay, then.
I got Richard's voicemail, so I'll circle back to Mary in a moment. We had, you know, there are things that I don't love about Zoom, but we had 45 people at our last meeting. So one of the things I love about Zoom is we have much more engagement because it's really easy for people to just drop in, check out a meeting. They don't have to travel. They don't have to worry about childcare. So we had a lot of really good participation. We had a vigorous discussion of the Parks Department's capital divisions plan for the renovation of the Inwood ball fields. I will not bore you with the many details. I encourage you to read the minutes when they are distributed, which they will be later this week. And I will be presenting a resolution in support of the proposed plan, renovation plan for the Inwood ball fields. That's ball fields 1, 4, and 5. Do I have that right, Steve? 1, 3, and 5. No, 1, 3, and 4.
1, 2, and 4.
1, 2, and 4. God, I always get it wrong. They're numbered weird. 1, 2, and 4. 3 and 5 will remain in active use while 1, 2, and 4 are being renovated. There are many, many details. I'm not going to get into them now, but it's a huge project. There were a couple of issues and some recommendations that we had, but it is a positive resolution in support of the proposal. At our next meeting, we will be taking a little bit of a deeper dive into some of the cultural affairs offerings throughout the community of many different ways that the arts are approaching how to deal with COVID and helping people cope in these very difficult times, and some of the incredible offerings from our many artists and arts organizations and institutions in the community. We'll also be having a presentation from the Washington Heights Inward Food Network, and we'll be having a discussion about barbecuing facilities in the community. It's not really clear if barbecuing is going to be a permitted use this summer within parks due to the requirements of physical separation. It may well be that the Parks Department and that the mayor states that that's not a permitted use. It hasn't been determined yet definitively, but either way, figuring out how to have that use appropriately, whether it's this summer or whether it's later in the season or next year when we are allowed to resume that, is an important and an appropriate community conversation. And thank you very much to Curtis Young of the Public Safety Committee for hooking me up with some of the law enforcement contacts so that we can have, you know, a frank and helpful conversation with Parks Enforcement and with the precinct. And with that, I yield my time. Thank you.
Thank you. Isidro?
We have one question. Is that sure? And that's Domingo.
Okay, yeah. What's your question, Domingo? Domingo, you gotta unmute yourself.
He might have stepped away, so.
Okay, so let's move on.
Tell him
to
to
the
reach out to you.
If
presentation.
he's got a question, he can
Yeah,
email
he
me and I'll
you
get
can
right back.
email her or just text her. Isidro, if you will.
So I was going to chime in on what Domingo was saying about the legislation that was passed by City Council, legislation 1898 and 1908. These are temporary legislations passed by the council. So I have communicated with some merchants, meaning like restaurants, and there's a huge concern about the fees that are being charged by the delivery fees, like Uber Eats, Seamless, Grubhub, and all that. So it's a conversation that I'm going to have a joint committee meeting with Domingo, because we don't want to see what happens to the black car and delivery basis with Uber, whereby these new applications would practically are charging anywhere from 30 to 40% of the fees, and that is just too high. So I'm going to work with Domingo to see if we can have the state perhaps consider a legislation that will put a cap on the delivery. Coming to my report from licensing, very happy, Eli, for sending Rosie Perez to my committee. The minutes have been submitted. She was gracious enough to send those minutes quite early. So I'm really grateful for the recommendation. I'm pleased to have her on the committee. As you probably know, we had about 10 licenses, 3 of which were withdrawn. But because like what Liz indicated, that because of this new technology now that we can now have access, or the community can have full access to the license committee, we had an overwhelming number of people from the community chime in into different concerns from different restaurants, bar and lounges. And for that, we were obligated to cut down the speaking time to 1 minute, because if we were to continue providing 2 or 3 minutes limit, we would have find ourselves going through 4 hours of 5 hours meeting. Just for 7 items, it took us like 3 hours. And again, I'm very grateful to what Jonathan done for the license committee coordinating this meeting. But it takes used to dealing with documents, dealing with tons of emails. So, it's a trying technology, and I'm sure that we can improve on it. I think we're successful this time around. We will get better. But taking into account that the number was so overwhelmed, we cannot allow like 2 minutes per person to speak on the matter when we have perhaps 40 members that want to speak on one issue. So it was overwhelming, but we'll see how we're going to manage. There were some concerns about one particular merchant, Casa Criolla, that it's brand new, is going to open up on, or intends to open up on Broadway, close to 192nd Street. And I received some emails, and even the board received at the office some emails. And there were some comments also made online. Some comments that, people who don't show up and be brave enough to show their faces, called that, the place had was full of drug, issues. That was a little bit concerning to me because we cannot label one restaurant and then think that the whole neighborhood is dealing with, this issue of, illicit traffic of drugs. So it was a bit unraveling, but again, it's the democratic process of voicing your opinion, but I think that we should be a little bit more careful how we phrase certain things. So, emails were sent about this particular merchant. The reason why this committee entertained and passed this resolution is because, in essence, most of the complaints were guided to the previous owner. And the owner wants to sell out. And, the way that we're figuring this out is that if we want to kind of deal with the problems and move forward and not deal with the previous owner, then allow this to move on. The hours that they requested were very fair, of midnight on weekdays and then 1 a.m. On the weekends. I think it was very fair. The NYPD has some concern about the traffic double parking problem. So we have some steps addressing that problem. And I think that, in overall, if we want to see business flourish and give them an opportunity, I think it's a fair way to start fresh and see what, we'll have moving forward. I understand the concerns of many neighbors in the area about this place or this area being inundated with perhaps dragging races, motorcycles and all that, but I don't think it's unique to that restaurant. So I think that, something has to be differentiated into knowing that it is not one particular spot, but perhaps the area in itself. So with that, I open up for some questions.
Floor is open. Catherine, do you have anyone who's? If you
We
please,
have
gonna
Liz.
you're gonna
Yeah,
take
so
4
Liz had her
questions.
hand. Okay, so we're
I'm
at
gonna
3.
keep them
So
short,
Liz,
please. Let's just make them questions,
So
observations,
I
keep
have,
them short. In just
so
1
I-
minute, because it's almost 10 o'clock.
I know. So I have many things to say on many of these things, but I will keep those comments for the general meeting because we don't actually adjudicate your licensing rezos. I do just want to say that last Wednesday, the city council did pass legislation capping fees for restaurants and bars that use Uber Eats, Grubhub, and other similar applications to 15%. So, I appreciate whatever involvement you and Domingo might have with regard to legislation, but that legislation's already been passed, so.
That's temporary. That's temporary.
I see. Okay.
That's temporary.
so OC followed by Steve Simon.
Lowered my hand. I'm gonna ask that at the general meeting.
Okay. So Steve, the floor is yours.
All right, the restaurant that you referred to just a little while ago, where there were a lot of community complaints and stipulations were drawn up, is that the one at Broadway and 193rd Street?
Correct.
So do those stipulations specifically address the issues that the residents came up with?
Most of it, because in essence, they don't want to see this new restaurant go back to the old habits of closing at 4 o'clock in the morning with a lot of patrons outside. So with the new hours that they agreed on, we felt that it was fair that on weekends be closing at 1 a.m. and then on the weekdays no later than midnight.
But do the stipulations perhaps also ask them to maintain, make sure that crowds are dispersed and don't hang around outside the establishment? Is that part of the stipulation?
So we requested that first that a good neighbor sign being placed. Also that there'll be a phone number displayed outside of the restaurant in case neighbors have any problems, so they can call someone right then and have a direct person to address the problems.
Well, is it too late to ask them to
Steve,
have some security, that the security guard can make sure nobody is hanging around there? I mean, a sign is
Well-
all well and good, but who the hell pays attention to a sign?
You're right. You're right.
Absolutely, great point. Now, who's next? Catherine, because I saw Domingos, and I'll just you make it just 4 questions, and so we can
No,
move
that
forward.
was it. It was only
That was
3.
it, Domingo, and then we'll wrap it up, and then IT and Richard Ullman, if we can get a hold of
I wasn't able to reach Mary and Richard Allman. By the time we actually got to the vote, he was no longer on the call, so he doesn't get to vote. But Mary, I'm still trying to get in touch with. So I believe that if we're able to get in touch with
Ebenezer.
her
Can you
tomorrow-
call her?
I did call her and I emailed her. She's not answering her phone.
But she shows us. She told me that she didn't have a microphone on her computer. That's what the problem was.
Right, so I'm hoping that she replies to my email. Ah, wait, I am unable to take part in this meeting because I deleted the link by mistake. I've emailed a couple of people to send it to me, but I know everyone is on their devices, so they're unable to do that. Okay, so we can figure out some other time how to get Mary into calls in the future, but since she wasn't actually on the call, the fact that she's showing up notwithstanding, she doesn't get to vote because she didn't hear the discussion. So
Thank
we're
you.
good, and it's unanimous with however many people it was.
Yeah, Domingo, your point, and then we'll move on.
I just wanted to reiterate, had a conversation already with Liz and with Debbie in regards to the naming of a street in Dykeman around the child who tried to save his friend. I sent everybody the bio.
I was gonna do that for new business.
Okay. Oh, sorry about that.
All right, no problem. So no more questions for Isidro. Jonathan, you report. Richard is no longer gonna be here, and then we go to new business with Natalie and Domingo.
Well, basically, just a clarification regarding the Facebook page that we are actually handling. So the current page that we are actually handling is a page that is tied to the a district manager, right? Which is recommendation done by Do It, right? But it doesn't mean that we are close to any other like better suggestion or like any idea on regarding like getting the followers of the other page that I don't know. Okay, I don't know the other page, and getting the followers or inviting the followers. There are different approach. Okay, that we can get either inviting them to follow the new one, or assigning Ebenezer user to that existing second page, and then assigning administrator permissions, and then removing the user that is not supposed to be there, or any other suggestion. So we are open to all suggestions. But I just give my recommendation on this matter. But the decision should come from Ebenezer in conjunction with Do It. Okay, just this from me.
Okay, thank you. So Richard's not here.
Wait, I have a question.
Hold on, there's 2 hands, Ellie, so I'm not sure what you want to do for this point.
Which one? Yeah, let's just take those 2.
Okay.
Ozzy and then Curtis.
So what?
It was Ozzy and then Curtis. Sorry, Curtis.
Okay, great. Ozzy and Curtis.
So back to the Facebook, what I wanted to say is that I don't think everyone got invite for the new Facebook. This was done without conversation with the people that post on the current Facebook. There are about 2,000 people on that. And I can tell you for the main person, as the main very person that posts on Facebook for the last, I want to say 3-4 years, there are 2,000 people on that Facebook page right now. And it took a lot of effort to get to it. So starting from a new page is a mistake as far as I'm concerned. You need to speak to Aisha and see how you can incorporate that as to become to a one page. And I think the old page should continue, and Ebenezer should have, admin rights or whatever that need to happen, that he control that, but not advising everyone that this is happening and just go ahead and start a new one. I think this was a big mistake.
Just one thing that I can tell you about that is it's not about that we don't know how to do that, right? It's very easy to just add any new user and assign administrator permission and then removing any other user that you don't want there.
Why won't we discuss that outside of this
Wait,
forum? And I'll tell you why.
I don't want to wait.
This is not a
let him answer.
social media meeting.
Yeah,
The main concern is about security. Okay, and again, we are open to any new approach, but the main concern is about security. If any page is tied to any personal profile, even though you remove this person in the future may be able to recover this platform at any time. Okay, and this is the main concern by doing, not by us. All right,
okay.
so
you gotta you
Official
have to.
communication of the board.
Ozzy,
I would like to finish my point.
No, but you were muted. I unmuted you because you did it by accident, so you can start your observation again. No one is muting you. I was unmuting you because we couldn't hear you.
Okay.
Thank
So
you.
all I'm saying is that we can take this conversation, Jonathan, outside and talk
yes.
about how to do things. But my point was that let's continue with the page that we have right now because it took a number of years to get to where we are today.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Catherine, do we have anyone else? So I can move on
Curtis
to
and Liz
Curtis.
is raising her hand.
Who?
Curtis, followed by Liz Ritter, who's raising her hand.
Curtis, you're the last one, my brother.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said thus far. I think there is a way, Jonathan. I don't want to go into details, but I think you should follow that recommendation strongly because I think it'll make it easier for everyone. If there are 2,000 people there, I think that's the best way to go.
I'd like to echo what OC and Curtis said. There's a huge amount of work put in there. There are a lot of people who follow that page. I don't know what are the issues going on peripheral to whatever, but we definitely need to figure out a way to preserve that page that has like 2,000 followers where there's like, for the most part, pretty thoughtful dialogue. So
yeah.
people who understand more about how this works better than I do can figure this out, not here, but I strongly want to make part of the record that we absolutely should not start from scratch when we have an existing page with 2,000 followers who are super engaged.
I think he was very clear, and I don't know if you were paying attention while he was saying
I was paying attention.
that he was, well, I guess I don't think so, but I think he was just saying to kind of like not make this into a social media forum, that he was following DeWitt's guidelines because of the profiles and the security issues, and that was it. That's what he said.
And I think also for the record, we need to be clear that the community board's site should be the community board's site.
Precisely. That's exactly the instructions that we're following. So thank you, Wayne, for reiterating what has already been said. For new business, Natalie, and then Domingo on the street naming proposition resolution.
Hello, thank you all. I'm not going to take too much of your time. I just wanted to add some notes that I kept raising my hand for during the committee report. So real quickly on the education committee, as far as access to devices, what I wanted to put into your ears, members of that committee and their friends, is that we have had actually a lot of reports uptown of ACS going to open cases of truancy for families who simply don't have the devices or don't have an internet connection or haven't been able to access. Anybody who has tried to use that DOE portal to request a device for a family doesn't have one or doesn't have enough, it takes forever. So it is actually already in that 911 situation where we have families being disrupted and students' records being affected by the fact that these devices are not available and that students aren't able to plug into distance learning. On the public safety issue of enforcement, So I just wanted to put into your ear, you guys will be getting an invite to what we're proposing as a Uptown Board 9, 10, 11, 12, along with some CBOs, town hall on enforcement of social distancing in communities of color. So stay tuned for that. And then just a note on the rezoning, the EDC tracker was disabled once the rezoning was reversed and the lawsuit, just like the zoning maps were reset to August 2018. So yeah, right now the only way is to go through EDC, go through city planning, or please, avail yourselves of Tim and our land use unit. It's our charter mandate to manage you lovely bunch of volunteers and provide land use support. That is all that I have. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. So basically, is it my turn?
Yeah, there's nobody else. So, but,
All right. Because Liz had her hand up.
I'm sorry about that, Liz. I didn't see that. At least still on mute. So go ahead, Liz.
So I just have a very quick question for the
I'll-
Borough President's representative. May I ask?
I wanted to kind of like finish with the new businesses and then just have just one Q&A for a minute or two.
Well, it's a
It's 10
Q&A to her report. It's
Okay,
very
cool.
quick.
Yeah.
All right.
So
So
go ahead, Domingo.
my biggest thing is I had a conversation with Liz already, so that's been established. Online it says that there needs to, when we're seeking to rename or co-name a street, we have to go through the transportation committee. But I was informed by Liz that it's very different. That it's actually through the Parks and Recreation Committee. So I have reached out to both Liz and Debbie to begin conversation around being able to co-name a street in Dykeman and Arden, I believe, or Nagel, to a young man named Isaiah Chemoronta, who recently, about a month ago, passed away because he jumped in to try to save his friend, and they both drowned in, I believe, they were some. It was somewhere in Inwood. I can't necessarily recall the specifics, but I think such a tragic situation, and a young man that basically embodied what we seek to be good, what we would consider courageous and making an effort to try to save someone's life, really does merit the importance of being able to co-name a street, not only because of his ultimate sacrifice, but also because he is native of this community. And I think it'd be great to be able to take that on and really cherish and commemorate him by being able to do so.
Thank you, Domingo, for keeping that in mind. And again, if there's, please guys, check the Q&A. If there's any questions that refer back to any of your presentations, just be kind enough to please address them and answer them the best way you can. I've enjoyed this meeting. Liz, I'm sorry.
So 2 quick things. One with
course.
regard to Domingo's item of new business. Just to be clear, it's the city council's Parks Committee that does street co-namings. I don't know why street co-namings go through the city council's Parks Department, but whatever. But that's why a lot of times street co-namings sometimes go through parks, but sometimes they go through traffic and transportation because they're street co-namings. Personally, I don't care. I'm happy to work with you, with Debbie. This was tragic, and we can figure it out from there. And my question for Natalie is, given that the inclusion reso did finally go through and was finally distributed to the electeds, and I believe it's going to be going out to the New York City Commission on Human Rights, Daryl. I'm just wondering, obviously now is not the time to be trying to have a retreat. We can't really do that now, but we can possibly have like some of the trainings that we had talked about getting. And I'm just putting a bug in the borough president's representative's ear in the hopes that we can maybe have some of those trainings in general for the full board and incorporated into whatever is the new member orientation that we do when we do that in July.
Yeah, but I think one thing that's important to know is that it finally went through because there was a situation that arose around the friendly amendment that I guess wasn't so friendly and it wasn't accepted. So the reason that it was prolonged for so long, we got to be accurate when we say certain things. The reason it took so long was because there was a conversation about adding a word "some," which wasn't part of my friendly amendment. And then based on the entire situation that arose, I felt it prudent to put it to the side because we weren't going to get anywhere bringing it back to a vote because my friendly amendment, which was submitted that day, was not accepted. And in a virtual email conversation ensued. So I want that to be noted as well as the reason why it took so long. It was
actually, I just like to be very clear.
I
Wait,
like
wait,
to.
I would
I'm
just
not going to
I
engage in the
just like
back
to
and
be
forth.
I
How
would
we
just,
did it, right?
If I can, if I may, if I may, if I may, if I may.
Let's not get
Yeah,
into
yeah, 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 yeah.
He's
wait,
saying.
wait,
If I may, I am the chair. So if I may, can I interject? Thank you. Thank you.
excuse me,
With the
as
resolution,
the secretary,
Liz,
I sent the
Liz,
resolution out on
Liz,
March 9th.
Liz, if we can have a dialogue, then we're gonna have to mute this and ask for an adjournment and move on. That's the option.
I
All right?
understand that.
Okay, so then allow me to finish the meeting and run the meeting. Can I? Because your report, wait. This is a new minute item, a new
It is
a
in
new
fact
business.
not.
It's a new business item.
It is
The
not a new
resolution.
business item.
Wait,
It is an old
but
business.
you still wanna engage in a conversation with me,
Excuse
and
me.
I don't.
With
And I
all
don't
due
think.
respect, it was an old item.
Liz,
It was the item that the resolution that I submitted
Right.
on March
It
9th.
wasn't, and that was
There
part.
has been no changes.
Then
It did not have.
Liz, I get it, but that was part of Ebenezer's presentation in the beginning.
I
All discussion.
understand
Wait,
that,
but
but
let
I
me
don't
finish.
understand
Well,
what
let me finish.
Domingo is raising as an issue.
If
mean, why can't
can
you
I
say
call?
yes for
Because of the subtle,
Can I call the meeting for an
subtle
adjournment?
implications
And it was
that you tried
pretty
to
crappy
give
for him to bring that up.
by assuming. Yeah, it
Um,
is a great time.
I want to say to the new board members, Christina, Mariela, Angel, I don't know if there's anyone else, to thank you for being here with us for 3 hours. Democracy is not easy. It's, when you have different minds and different people with different opinions, there's always the confrontation of ideas. It has been my goal to keep it civil. That's not always the case. Sometimes it gets a little out of lane and out of order. But hopefully, I want you to be aware that in the hearts of each and every one of us, the intentions are usually on the good side of the truth and the good. We all mean well. We all want the best for our community. We may not agree. There might be these frictions and differences of opinion, but at the end, we all come together and we come into the one goal that we have, which is the best for our community. So I couldn't thank you enough. Welcome with open arms. I think that you have all of us to reach out to, and if you need anything, just come to us, and I will be there. So thank you once again. I'd like to call this meeting for an adjournment.
Second.
Thank you.
Wait,
I'll
who's
respond
second?
to the questions later.
I'm sorry, who's second?
Domingo just did.
Okay,
Last time, does anyone remember who seconded it?
it was
'Cause
in March. Forget it, nobody will remember.
I tried, Olsie. I tried.
Thank you.
All righty. So have a great night.
Take care.
All right, good night,
Bye-bye.
thank you.